As you know, technical difficulties sometimes happen, and sometimes it takes us some minutes to get started, but we are here. And as our guest was saying, we are in a time warp with the time difference between Spain. Normally, it's a bigger difference because we talk to the US, but here is just 1 hour. But we're here. We got here on time. It's a Star Wars Day, as you can see. So I had to wear the T-shirt.
Beautiful.
And this is dedicated to our guest. Let me see if I can make this work.
There is a message for you.
Sure. Let me see. Okay, enough. How are you, Kieron? How's things?
I'm just shutting the door to make sure the rest of the house doesn't disturb us if anyone walks in, which is entirely possible. But I'm good. It's been a profitable May the 4th. I said the fact I got the time slightly wrong. I mean, I have not changed into a Star Wars T-shirt, so I'm letting the side down. I'm just wearing a sensible jumper.
Okay, you have 15 seconds. Go and change. No, I'm kidding. How's things in your neck of the woods? Have things gotten better? Are you vaccinated or something? How is it?
Yeah, I've had my first vaccination. Like UK's, I mean, the UK's in a mostly pretty good space at the moment in terms of COVID, which is very different to how it was like 2 months ago. 2 months ago was incredibly intense, and now it's it's in a very different place now. So I'm stopped. The thing is, like, I was already kind of a hermit anyway, so like I have had to remind myself, I can now maybe start thinking about going out and doing things again. Like, and I have not done barely anything for like a year and a half. Like, I can count on the fingers on one hand the amount of things I've done outside my house. Like, I just haven't done anything, which is fine. Like, when my head's got together, I've got a lot of work done. Like, I'm actually finally ahead on all my scripts. But like most of last year, my productivity was way down. But yeah.
What is the thing? Imagine, okay, my name is Victor Frankenstein. I'm your doctor. I'm not saying I'm a good doctor. I'm just saying I'm a doctor. But imagine I just released the world from COVID with this road ring. Has become the pop, pop, pop. What's the first thing that when you know everything and everybody is safe that you could do that you've been dying to do since March of last year?
Oh, I'd probably go and buy some more hobnobs. A nice packet of chocolate biscuits. Now, in reality, I'll just go and visit my mum. And to be honest, that's kind of like one of the things it's able to do. Like, mum's had both of her vaccines now, so like when the UK opens up a bit, like that's pretty much the first. I saw her once last year, so it's like that's the weird thing about this period for me. It's like it has reminded me of how much some stuff I just don't need, like the kind of what is actually just like not necessary. And the other side is also remind me what is really important to me. You know what I mean? So it's made me think a lot more about friends and family and like really hippie values, like really good kind of Jedi-esque feelings towards people. So yeah,
give me those values and fuck the others. I love those values.
They're good. Like, actually, I've only met my my new nephew once. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so I would like need to go up and see Cass. That kind of thing. Yeah. So like, in a perfect world, yeah, there's so many American friends, American and Canadian. In fact, anyone like around Chrissy's, my wife's Italian. So we haven't seen them. So I'd love to go over to Italy, like over to Turin and see them. That would be lovely, In fact, I've been learning Italian for the last year on Duolingo, and I'm up to day 450 or something. So I actually know I'm not good in any way, and I won't be any use. But like I have learned some Italian, so I want to actually go and practice it.
You're the opposite case to Gary Frank, right?
No,
like Gary is married to an Italian woman too, but he lives in Italy. So he hasn't been able to come back, to see the family since this started. So you're in both sides of the spectrum.
Yeah, definitely. It's that's the world, isn't it?
Absolutely. I'm surprised you didn't move because Lee Bermejo already moved there. Gary already moved there. You're next, just so you know. You're moving to Italy.
It's like it's nice. I mean, like Turin, that like they have these little houses up in the mountains, and they're really cheap. And there's part of me who would love to buy a tiny house in the mountain and go and just disappear there all summer and become like, I don't know, Alan Moore on steroids, like completely like just grow an enormous beard and see where it takes me.
Well, just so you know, those two are posh and they live in the south in Tuscany, close to Lucca and all that. So it's a different. You're like me. You like to be in the north, where the real working people works. So, have you noticed in the time you've been, this has happened? Have you noticed that you work overwork? That could be the work, that, or the other way around. That it's been difficult for you to focus.
Like the first half, like the first 6 or so months. I mean, I've got friends who just couldn't work.
Mm-hmm.
And I was aware that my productivity was down by about 25%
mm-hmm.
or so. So I was definitely doing less, but I was still never not working. And like, it didn't cause any problems because almost all the people I work with slowed down more.
Mm-hmm.
So like the certain artist friends, but they've been not in a bad, don't mean in a bad way. This is just like everyone dropped off, but since I dropped off less, it didn't cause any problems. And I was very aware that if it was like in a normal situation, this level of workload just wouldn't work. But even like, but now I've sort of settled into a kind of quite a casual, like it feels like marathon running. The fact that every week doesn't change very much. Yeah. And I've got to a place where I genuinely carve out my weekends. Like I always abstractly plan not to work at the weekend. I mean, I always do work, but like not in terms of like script writing. So like I basically write 5 pages of comics minimum a day in the week. And then I polish up normally like Monday to a classic week is Monday to Thursday. I do around 5 pages a day. Then on Friday, I polish it all up and hand it in. You know what I mean? So basically in any given week, I'll write a script. And like, there's always, and that's only really the morning's work. So like, you have till the afternoon to other stuff. So like, it does feel like running a marathon, and I'm aware that I always have so much stuff on, and I'm aware and the only way to deal with that is to pace yourself. Like, me being able to write a script in a day is that something that can happen, but like, it's not something that can happen every day. And if it happens like 2 days in a month, that's that month dead. So like, the only way to sort of do it is actually just keep on, this Sisyphean tapping, you know what I mean? So yeah, that's how we do things.
How important is to keep the routine? I mean, to not overdo or to not the other way around, just go crazy with it. You know what, like I always like when people talk about working in dunes, like going to the peak and going to the bottom. But I always think that for a writer or an artist, that's not a good thing. You got to be steady in your work, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely like, at the moment, I've cultivated I just said marathon running. That's what it feels like. I've got a pace, and it's keep on going. And I've changed my method across my life various times. Like there was definitely other times when I've incredibly crunched in very short periods of time, and I definitely got to a point in Marvel where I was a quicker writer than I think most of my editors realized. And that's mostly because when I said, could I do work, I'm only planning for Monday to Friday. And like, I'm planning not to work at weekends. And that means 2 things. 1, I do have a break, therefore I can keep things kind of consistent. And 2, when everything goes entirely wrong, I have the weekend. It's not like I've got no time, like there's if you've got no give, you're going to break. That's definitely how I do things.
Now, that's amazing to know. I never thought about it that way. To think that that the weekend is your safety net. If something wrong happens during the week or whatever, life gets in the way. You always know you have that safety net, right? The other, if you plan to work 7 days a week, your brain is never relaxed because there's no safety net. But if it's there, you can work in a different way, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like I mean, I work well with deadlines. Like, it's one of these things where like deadlines are one of the things that motivate me. So I fill my life with deadlines. But yeah, you'll know this as much as anybody that there's a tendency, I think, for creatives to have that moment of, I did it, like in artists, I drew an issue in 2 weeks once. And in their head, it's like, I can do that every time. And no, you can't. Your quickest speed is not like the speed you can do all the time. You've got to reliably understand what your work rate is on average, I guess. And that's hard because that changes, like as evidenced by last year,
Absolutely. I always love that phrase about panic makes you creative, but you don't want to be in panic all the time.
I mean, it's weird, like stress works for me really. Stress motivates me a lot, but it's not good.
Let's be honest, it's not.
And it's not good for anyone around me. I've become a monster.
That's also true. It's not good for you. It's not good for anybody around you. For the family and all that. Like my wife always says, you're always stressed, and you don't realize how bad the stress is not only for you. It's also for the family, and that's what made me stop working on the weekends. I work on the weekends, but in a different way. I research, I read a lot, I did different things, But during the weekend, I try to disconnect to be more time with, with my 7-year-old and with the wife, because I realized, as when she told me that, like, no, I don't, I don't rest. Even on the weekends when they're home, I'm in the computer.
Yeah, I know what I mean. Like, a lot of my, I mean, I just say I try to, carve out space for Chrissy and seeing people. And like, one thing I've done in this whole period is I call my mum every day. Like, I was aware my mum was in a very high risk group, so she had very little social stuff. So like, I'm a quite bad son. Like before that, I didn't call her enough. And now I'm like, it's now a part of my life. So I'm sort of planning for that kind of stuff. That's kind of one of the things I mentioned previously about what's important. But at the weekend, most of the things I do to relax are more work. You know what I mean? And like, I don't mean like it's just work, it's other work. So it's like with Die, I'm doing I'm writing an RPG on the side. So this whole big RPG manual, and it's like 130,000 words. It's like at least a couple of novels worth of stuff now. And it's like, and I mainly write that at the weekends. So like my break from work is a different kind of work. And that's just kind of, I like doing things. Like even I paint little Warhammer miniatures, I'm a big proper nerd, and that's kind of work. You know what I mean? Like I feel very happy when I see a shelf full of miniatures I've painted, because it's something like creative, but it's also, so the joy of that is I'm never going to make money out of that. My problem is most of my stuff, which is most of my things I love, I've turned into money, and I've just done that because that. But with the Warhammer, I'm never going to turn that to money, and it's even that I kind of have, because I've written Warhammer comics now, so. But it's not the same thing. Writing a story isn't the same thing as very badly painting a tiny miniature rat man. Yeah.
Yeah. One of my wife's brothers, he likes to paint Warhammer figures, and he's like, I don't stop working on that on the weekend, but that's not my work. I'm not making money out of it. So even if I do an exhibition, and he does exhibitions, a couple times a year, it's like, for me, that's not work. That's the stuff I do when I'm not working. Like, but you're working the whole weekend. Like, no, for me, it's not work. It's a different thing.
It's like creative work can be so much freeing. You know what I mean? That's the kind of like to be out. It's like writing. When writing's good in quotation marks, like it's a few things are better. And like, and the problem is, I've got to write when I'm not inspired. I've got to find ways to make it happen. You know what I mean? And that's when it's work. Yeah. But the basic kind of loving what you do. I mean, I don't want to sound like this is internet stuff here and everything's always work, but finding joy in a task, I mean, if you think about it, most things are work. Like, tell you what, I love doing the dishes. Like, it takes me a while to, like, literally the physical process of rubbing it, and I sit there and have a little think, and I do the dishes quite badly. But there's something quite like, there's a pile of mess here, and then the pile of mess is gone, and I have some clean plates. And that's like, in some ways, writing is almost like that. The idea that we have this chaotic mess, and I've turned into a story. We've created order from chaos. And that's kind of, I think that's so much about creativity. Yeah,
and it's also about, I love the metaphor you just used about the plates, because you're watching, you're washing the dishes and all that. And with writing is you have a million words at your disposal, and everybody has ideas. We always, when somebody comes to me, and I'm sure a lot of people comes to you at cons or whatever, oh, I have an idea. And that's like, ideas are a dime a dozen. Everybody has one. It's not about the ideas. It's about getting that chaos, and make it into something that makes sense, right? So let me ask you this, because Jason Aaron gave me the perfect answer about when does he do most of the work, and he was literally when I'm doing this. And he's like, and that's the worst possible time, because since you're doing that, everybody thinks you're not working. And for him, that's the main part, because then you get to the technical part, which is the typing. But like for him, the work happens before in his head. Does it happen to you too?
I do love the idea of Jason being this sort of. I mean, Jason has got this very meditative vibe. Jason's got this lovely, calm energy, and I'm not. I'm a bit more like nasal is what I sound like. To some degree, like like for me, it happens almost when you're distracting yourself. Like I keep a notepad by my desk, like in my bed. So like quite often as I'm going to sleep, I'll be scribbling. So I'll have to scribble something down, or like a lot of work gets done at 4 a.m. So like I wake up in the middle of the night, and then my brain starts going. And if I'm not angsting about life, I'll be angsting about the Eternals or whatever. But a lot of the stuff, like I work at places to sort of leave. This is one of the things I often do. I try to create spaces to think about the work, which isn't just thinking about the work. So like with Wicked Divine, I had this whole playlist, and it got bigger and bigger, and by the end it was like nearly 500 songs. And And what I did was I just listened to that on shuffle, like when I was walking around and like doing the dishes and whatever. But those songs were connected to the book. And each song was probably connected to a character or like a moment in the book I knew was coming or like a theme. And like by listening on shuffle and seeing all those bits rearranged around each other, it made me think about the book. So basically, just a thing to make me think about the book from different angles gave me other ideas, which I then wrote down. And that's kind of like the way I sort of solve the problem, or at least it's not quite true. The way I generate the material to solve the problem. And then on the other side, like Dies, for example, this is even more so. Like when I've written this whole RPG, that RPG is basically me thinking about Die from a different angle.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's a completely different task, but it's also everything in there applies to Die. So it's I look for it, since my brain's quite distractible, I look for excuses to find ways to think about something. Yeah. But also like a lot, I do quite a lot on the page though. Like, especially now, I get a rough idea. I know roughly what this issue is going to be like. Like, there's going to be this, you know what I mean? It may only be a few sentences, but I do just work out stuff for the page. So it's like, I know I've got this scene. And it's like, okay, this scene has to happen. So before that scene, this has to happen. And then, it all sort of like, it's like doing a jigsaw, but you're making up the pieces. So like, there's a lot of which I do is just literally making stuff up. And that's kind of like, I joked about this on Twitter. There's so much about writing. All those writing guides don't say, "Oh yeah," and then I just made up a bunch of stuff. It's like, how did you solve the third act problem? Well, I just sat down and made up a whole load of stuff, and it kind of solved the problem. Still.
How many notepads do you have around the house? Be honest.
Notebooks. Oh man, I don't know. Like, I generally don't know. Like in terms of actual
it's so many you don't know.
yeah. I mean, the thing is, I also don't know which ones are mine because Chrissy, my wife's also a writer. So like, two writers basically means the entire house is full of books and notepads. So like that's just the way it goes. Like in terms of actual real notebooks, actual ones which I use, I've got like two Moleskines, which I use. Like one is mainly for RPG stuff and one is mainly for ongoing projects, and they're my main books, and I write there, and I try to write stuff in them. But other ones are just like surfaces to write on, and eventually I'll go and find, I wrote something in here, and A, I'll try to work out what it was, and B, if I work out what it is, I'll then transfer it into something like Scrivener. So most of my notes end up being collated into kind of a larger document, and then I normally forget about them again.
You forget about them. That's good. And the other question is, you mentioned, the music, that playlist you had for Week on Divine, but do you work always that way? I mean, with music, with a podcast, with TV, something around, or there's a part of the process where you just need absolute silence to be able to concentrate?
Depends on the project. Like, it really, like this. Actually, some books, like I used to describe, I had two sorts of projects. This isn't true anymore, but I used to say I had projects where I had a playlist for it, and I normally just wrote listening to that playlist. And I had projects where I didn't have a playlist. And the projects where I have the playlist are, on average, probably slightly more personal. And the ones where I didn't have a playlist are a little bit more maybe intellectual. Like that's drifted away a bit. Partially because I've got older, and partially because I've got lazier with playlists. But like I am almost always writing to music. And a lot of it, it's for mood. Like lyrics don't distract me, and like I often put on music which I'm trying to evoke something in myself, like something big and melodramatic and dark and gothic and passionate. I'll stick on it, like I don't know, a Nick Cave record or whatever, or like something angry. Stick on a Atari Teenage Riot record or whatever. But I can't listen to podcasts. Like I'll either be listening to the podcast or listening. If someone. Someone actually speaking to me, that takes me out of it entirely. Yeah, I need something to give me a mood, but also something that distracts me a little, like something that takes up a bit of my brain.
It's fun. I was thinking that Olivier Coipel told me exactly, and I said that's more or less the same as you do this, which is he always changes the kind of music he listens to depending on the scenes he's doing. He needs epics, he's going to go, with Wagner or John Williams or something like that. But if he needs romance scene, he's going to go with emotional French, romance music from the 90s, from the 19th century or something like that. So that pushes you to the mind space you need to be in a way.
Yeah, that's what I used to do with like. When I had playlists, I did more of them, and it's always about they kind of, can I get this playlist to evoke the vibe of the book?
Yeah.
And some of it is just like the soundtrack, but the other part of it as well for me is that if you've got it's like Pavlovian. Like I've got this song called Cherry Lee by Gowns. And Cherry Lee is it's like a out country sound of a lot of static. It's a weird record, and that's the first song on the Die playlist. And the thing is, I just press play on that, and it's like, okay, now it's time to write Die, because like my brain has been programmed to sort of like, okay, this is happening now, and I'm going to get in that headspace. So like it's I'm sure it's so funny because it's like obviously Phonogram was the first book I really did, but Phonogram was absolutely about me like how to use music as a magical effect. And what I've just described is if you strip away the metaphor of magic, me using music to evoke a state of mind that allows me to work, that's 100% a Phonogram magic spell. You know what I mean? So like there's some, but there's definitely some books where I realize, oh right, now I'm gonna have to listen to, I mean, like Eternals, when I was like plotting it, ABBA for some reason, mid-period ABBA, and I'm not quite sure I mean, there's something glacial, you know what I mean? There's something not like the pop ABBA, not okay, they're all pop, but you know the slightly sad records when they've got like, you can dance to them, but there's something really glacial and cold and sad and adult. Like, okay, that's the Eternals. They're like the idea of like, you know, divorce pop.
Have you gone to the ABBA museum in Stockholm?
No, is it good?
It's funny as hell. I remember. Have you met Phil Noto in person?
Yeah.
Okay, imagine Phil Noto going to the ABBA museum, coming back with a T-shirt and telling you, "Oh my god, that place is pop, crazy pop." So next time I can do the Heroes Comic Con I organize in Stockholm, I'm inviting you, just so you can go to the ABBA museum if you want to do. That's so much fun. It's a museum about ABBA in the middle of Stockholm. You know, like that, the gods of pop or something like that. Well, for some people they are.
Yeah, I am completely sold. That sounds fantastic.
Let me see, because there's some people asking here, and I don't want them to think that I'm ignoring them. Robotman said, Kieron, I think you have a fan. Hello to David. Okay, thank you. Pedro Mercado, hello everyone, big fan of your work. Did Sandman bar American Gods inspire your Wicked and Divine? To me, they have both projects have a similar soul. How do you pitch a complex project like that one or Phonogram?
Like, tell you what, it's like, obviously I love gaming, like especially Jamie McKelvie. He only got into comics because of Sandman. You know, that was 100% his way. A girlfriend of his lent him the first Sandman, and then he started buying Sandman, and the shop eventually got him to buy other stuff as well. And the weird thing about gaming is, obviously, like I said, I love him. He's never a big influence on me. It's weird because obviously we're in similar areas. Like, you know, we're interested in meta mythology. We're interested in the nature of stories. You know, like, and my response when I first read Sandman, this is before I was really into comics. When I first read some Sandman, my kind of response was, yes, obviously. And I don't mean it in a bad way. I said, no, this is how you do it.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say like he was directly inspiring. In some ways, he delineates the area. So like you're aware that when you're going into that area, you're aware that it's his area. So you want to find your own space. And we're certainly like really, as I said, we're interested in similar themes. But I think most of the stuff that people would presume I got from gaming, I think I actually got from Pratchett. Like Terry Pratchett, the novelist, because, you know, but they're obviously coming from very different places, and obviously they did Good Omens together. But that kind of that interest in what stories do and the wordplay and all that kind of came from there. In terms of like pitching Wick Div, like actually we did say Wick Div is kind of the Sandman you can dance to. Was our kind of two sort of jokey one-liner. With pitching Phonogram was very different. Like, we were complete nobodies. Jamie knew Eric slightly because he'd done a book with him. I mean, Jamie was more the known quantity. And we did it's quite a short pitch. It was 3 pages. And I'm pretty sure Eric's just said yes because he liked Jamie's art. Like, you know, and of course, Eric, of course, is an enormous British music fan. So that is probably really helpful. So I just did kind of like this download. And like, this is you know, this sort of thing that it's deliberately with Phonogram, I was pitching the passion and the concepts, like the opening, like music is magic, you know, and then explaining it. Why is this exciting? With Wick Div, we're in a very different sort of place. Like obviously Image were always very kind with us for our entire career, very supportive of Phonogram. And we had just come off the back of Young Avengers. And we were very aware that this was like Young Avengers was a really big book. Like, people loved it. And we had more attention at any point in our careers. So it's like, okay, we want to do the 50 to 75 issue series. You know, that's the thing for our generation. We came in liking those classic 90s Vertigo runs, your Preachers, your Sandmans, your Invisibles. we never had a chance to do one. So we want to do our version of that. This is our one shot, you know, in the very Eminem mode. So to be fair, it wasn't really a problem pitching it because, you know, we were a known quantity. So, and also the market was excited. For me, it was much more, okay, how are we going to do it? And so we kind of, I mean, Wicked Divine was very much like me and Jamie having broken down and metabolized everything loved about all those books, but how we want to do it. You know what I mean? So it all kind of like, it flew quite naturally, even though as much work as it was.
For you, as more as an influence, would you say it's Sandman or Promethea?
Good question. I guess Sandman. I mean, Promethea came a little bit late. You know what I mean? Like, I was already I wouldn't say a fully formed human being, but I got into Promethea after I got into comics. So, but Sandman was around a little earlier for me. I mean, like in terms of really big influences from the 90s, like the books I was obviously Watchmen. I've talked a lot about my love of Watchmen, but like before I got into comics properly, quotation marks.
Let me correct: Neil Gaiman or Alan Moore?
Oh, Alan. Like I say, like, and I don't mean that. I think, you know, and there's no way Neil would take offense at that. I think Alan, the entire industry owes the Alan.
Neil could answer the same thing you just answered. He would
exactly, yeah. You know, literally, you know, Alan, you know, gave Neil that script, and you know, Alan literally was the Gandalf to actually Gandalf and Frodo. Gandalf never taught Frodo any magic. No, you get the point.
It makes sense. Let me see. Pedro Mercado asks, how did you come with the Aphra character and the dark versions of R2-D2 and 3TPO? I find that those characters are in the top 3 of the best ones in Star Wars nowadays.
That's very kind. Thank you very much. Basically, we're at the. I was doing a Darth Vader book, obviously, and we've just been to Lucasfilm and we were pitching the book. So me and Jason and the Marvel editors, we basically gave, this is roughly what we want to do. And the conversation had happened, so they said yes to so many ideas, and I was like, okay, great, I can do this. My main idea about Darth Vader is it had to be like a dark Star Wars books. So my main thing was it couldn't just be a book about the Imperium, because the Empire, because the Empire is grey and dull, and that is not like Star Wars. Star Wars is about action and romance and wittiness and all that. So I needed to create something that worked like Star Wars. And, I took the fairly obvious approach of doing the Dark Mirror. So let's assume that Vader takes the position of Luke. You know what I mean? Obviously, Vader and Luke are very different characters, but let's assume that. We need a sort of cast around him to sort of fill the roles of that. And I also knew I needed a character to do the talking. Because that's like Darth Vader. The more Darth Vader says, the less Darth Vader he is.
Yeah.
So he has, he's about standing, there's so much of ours is just blank shots of his helmet. So I need people around him to do the exposition, because comics is not good at physical actions. It takes a lot of panels to do small stuff we could do easily in cinema. So we need someone to talk.
Yeah, so it's difficult to transmit the sound of his breathing in comics and all those poses. So it just feels unnatural, right?
Yeah, I know. So I was thinking all this stuff, and I was walking around the Lucasfilm headquarters, and I just passed a statue of Indiana Jones. Like, it's a big, like, life-size statue, and I was already realizing, like, the Star Wars characters are really iconic and simple. Like, you don't make them too complicated. They're like, farm boy, secretly Jedi Knight. The sort of soul-surviving princess of a doomed world. Or in the case of Han Solo, just rogue space trader. He's a roguish smuggler. It's really simple but incredibly fun. Anyway, I saw this Indiana Jones statue and I thought, rogue archaeologist. That's funny. That's pure and simple. Like taking someone with all of Indiana Jones' charm and making me ethically awful. and then the line came, it belongs in an armory. And I sort of laughed at that and I thought, okay, I'm going to try that. And especially, of course, the fact it's also Harrison Ford, that kind of like in joke, appealed to me. And so Aphra kind of emerged from there. Like when I wrote the original description, Salva gave her ethnicity. I gender switched her. Salva chose, the physical appearance. So that's how it ended up. In terms of 000 and BT, it was similar. Like, I knew I wanted some straight comic relief characters, a la the droids. So I decided, as I said, I didn't want to be too complicated. Let's just do 2 drones. And of course, there's something really funny about someone as like useless as 3PO being turned into the monster. Someone, especially because at my Marvel books, I've done all manner of like monstrous robots, like Unit 451. It's one of the sort of themes of my work, and they always have a very good reason for doing what they're doing. And it's about like these kind of ethical, calculating machines who've decided to kill us all. And I thought with 000, it was like, why don't we just remove the ethics and just have it? I just really like doing it. It's my thing is like sticking syringes into your eye. It's just my thing. And the idea of like that very kind of like effect delightfulness of 3PO doing it just amused me enormously. So that's where those two came from.
So is releasing C3PO from any ethical concerns in a way, right? Is that,
exactly.
You know what, I'm having fun making you suffer.
So actually BT was I had the idea of the blaster mech, the droid that has loads of guns inside. In my head, it's like R2D. You may notice that BT only ever goes bleep, and in my head, he's just making like a swearing noise. Like it just sounds like he's walking, and he goes beep 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 beep, like a very angry Morse code machine. Yeah, that was fun.
How much did you love Star Wars before you started working on the books? Are you a lifetime Star Wars fan?
Well, the thing is, the first movie I saw in the cinema was Empire. So, like, this is absolutely formative to me entering the hobby. But, like, I'm not going to say I was the biggest Star Wars fan in the world, just because I know how big people are. You know what I mean? I don't have a tattoo. Therefore, I know I can't be. But, like, in terms of, like, the mythology of being part of, like, this culture, you know what I mean? Like, you cannot separate Star Wars. Like, as I said, it was my first movie I saw. My first image of evil was Darth Vader in that way. You know what I mean? So, like, me writing Darth Vader was kind of like writing a prologue to my own entry into geek culture. You know what I mean? It's like that's some Grant Morrison-esque stuff. You know what I mean? Like, me creating a time loop to be there's something really weird about that.
And then you did Darth Vader, of course. Then you did the main book. How did you have to change your frame of mind from getting to one book to the other? Because you were in the dark corners, to say in a way, and then you had to move. Oh God, this is something too posh, but to the light. So, how was it?
It was interesting, like, because of course between the two, I did Doctor Aphra as well.
Yeah, that's true.
So, like, there was like in my head, I was going to do Darth Vader, then stop doing work for hire and just do create your own for a while.
Yeah.
Except they asked, "Do you want to do a Doctor? We want to do a Doctor Aphra book. Do you want to do it?" And I thought, oh, we need to, actually, yeah, I should, because there's still some stuff with Doctor Aphra I should, do. So I did that. And halfway through that, we did Screaming Citadel, which was this crossover. And I would be, I got to write the Star Wars, the Han and Luke and Leia in the previous crossover a bit. But, like, by this point, they're asking, are you interested in taking over the main book? And I thought, okay, I'm going to do Screaming Citadel and see how I get on with writing them. Because there's always I had this fear with Wolverine as well. Like, they're such big characters. You think, have I got anything useful to say with them? So, but the thing is, the second you write Wolverine, it's like, no, this is great. I can, he's absolutely. It's a road inside a very dark, not deep primal part of you. Like writing Wolverine was never a problem. It was really always a delight, and he always had things to say. And like Han, Luke, and Leia were like that. You know what I mean? Like I don't think the only real sort of thing was definitely trying to put it in the period, like reading all of Jason's stuff, looking at the two movies that bookend it, because we have we have Luke in A New Hope and we have Luke in Empire, and these characters have changed significantly. So much of my run, in fact, also Darth Vader, was okay. What other stuff has happened? So, like, I mean, obviously, here's a really easy example. Jason had done a lot about Luke searching out Force stuff, and the thing is, he's already got as good as Force stuff as he can. But the question is, why isn't he doing any more? So I had to basically stop him looking for Force stuff due to something. But the other thing that happened is everyone got promoted to quite high ranks. So it's like, well, how the hell did he become a general or whatever it was? I forget. And I had the idea, oh yeah, everyone more important than got killed. So you know what I mean? There's a lot of that kind of thing, and you're always looking for what's important and hasn't been done in this time period. So it's like, like Luke, and also like some of the flirtation with like Han and Leia. You know what I mean? That was there. And to be honest, like at the same time, like just as I think we were planning it, obviously Carrie Fisher died, and I was sort of thinking about obviously it was really very moving and like sad, and I found myself thinking like, and I'm interested in why she didn't become a Jedi. And obviously we can't do much about that, but really kind of making her one of the leads for the period seemed really interesting. The idea that, foreshadowing where we go in Jedi later. So like, it wasn't, I must admit, I found doing the two books quite similar in some ways, because it was just like looking at the period, working out what we could do. And also, like, me and Jason had worked quite close together. Like, we planned especially the first part of Darth Vader and Star Wars together, and then we did the crossover, and then Aphra went to go on in Star Wars for a while, so we were always working closely together. So it felt like a very natural extension. So in reality, I think my entire Darth Vader, Aphra, Star Wars is kind of one big thing for me. You know what I mean? I don't think I don't feel I was moving from book to book. I feel I was basically carrying on through it.
It makes perfect sense. If I ask you comics storytelling, what is it? And we keep going back to music, which is a nice thing. For you, comics storytelling, is it rock and roll? Is it a symphony? Or is it jazz?
Oh my god! I think Matt Fraction would kill me if I say jazz. No, like, it's one of those just comics of jazz is one of those things which just like makes Fraction angry because it's also true. The thing is, comics can be any one of those things you've just described in any other genres. I mean, it's not. It's only ever a metaphor. But like, for me, when I try to evoke music in comics, I'm trying to evoke it indirectly. You can't transfer it directly, but you can think, okay, I want this as rock and roll. I want this a raw, basic, like a 4-beat drum. I want a simple panel structure. I want it driving. I want I want it all like. I think about grunge, especially like early on at Marvel. I used to describe my approach as like grungy. So I do a lot of small panels, like 4, 5, 6, maybe even 8 panel grids, and then so this is all like the small emotional stuff. And then you do really big panels for the big chorus. So like you're doing Smells Like Teen Spirit. You're doing like really small, quiet, loud, quiet, quiet. You know what I mean? Like, so that isn't like grunge, but like it's very much inspired by that. And so you got if you're doing a much more complicated sort of comic, when you've got stuff interplaying, like if you're leaning into the Watchmen of it, if you're leaning into the very strict grid and the stuff interplaying, it can be much more like a symphony. And like if you break stuff around the edge, you can be you can be much more like jazz. In fact, some ways, something like me and Stephanie, like with Jamie, we were working very tight scripts, and Jamie was always about execution, and then we change and make it very tight. But someone like Stephanie makes these big choices, and then I respond with the captions change radically depending what Stephanie does. And that in some ways is like, it's like jazz being, of course, primarily an improvisational art form. You know what I mean? Like, and for me, the important thing about comics is you take from everywhere. Or that's not true. You can take from wherever you want to take from. And the thing is, as comics is a bastard art form, you want to be inspired by as many things as possible, not just the comics you've read. You know what I mean? Like I'm regularly when I'm watching random stuff on the internet, or like in art museums, or looking at Assyrian statues, I'm thinking about, okay, how can I bring this back to comics? And I think that's really important for me anyway. Yeah,
no, that's a really important lesson I always tell to people who wants to do comics, which is, if you want to do comics, don't only read comics. Look at everything, learn from everything, read everything. Because if you only read comics, you are not going to be a good comics writer, right?
I think it's like, you take away the influences of other art forms from like all the great comic writers, quotation marks. Like, you're not just having comics, because it's just, you've got a better chance now, because like comics are a lot more varied. There's more variety in comics now. So maybe you could now, but I wouldn't want to recommend it, because there's so much stuff in the world. Because even like in reading, it's like life experience. It's like people. It's like you want to go out and take stuff from the world and bring it into you, I guess.
Yeah, that reminds me of an interview I read, I don't know, 15 years ago, to Ridley Scott, about when he was doing Alien, and he was, bringing Mobius and other people. He was bringing his influences from Metal Hurlant, heavy metal, and all that. And people was like, why are you using comics? And he was like, because it'll make my movies a lot richer if I take influences from something that is not movies. Right? So, go, please.
No, always. It's like, what have they not seen before? That's, what I mean? Like, when I'm sitting down to do it, especially like, I'm somebody who really likes the new, underline it. And like, one of the things that attracted me to comics is I came to comics quite late. I was like a late convert, really. And it was just it's like, the metaphor I always use, imagine not knowing about music till you're 25. Like, yeah, you know it exists, but then you discover that there's like shops full of this stuff. And you go in, and, oh my God, there's like 100 years of pop music I can explore. I always like that with comics. And also it's because there's still things I think can be done. So I'm always really like, no matter what work it is, I'm trying to work out how can I make this sort of speak to the moment and what can I take from stuff? Like, I mean, it's like Eternals. There's an example. Like in Eternals, I've sort of coded this name generator. So I've got this literal anytime I write a deviant name, this machine generates it. You know what I mean? And there's no need to do that, but it's fun. And it's also like, it's something, it gives you a different sort of texture, I think. Yeah.
And also I love that because you mentioned the texture, but it's not a name you came up with. It's a name that the machine gave you. And automatically it makes you go in a different direction. That if you create the name, in a way or other, you're preconceiving what the name is going to mean and what the character is going to be. But if it's the machine, you have to work with what it gives you, right? So your mind has to go in a different direction.
Yeah. And of course, the irony is, but since I programmed the name, all the things that go into the thing that makes a name, I created that. But what it generates, I don't know. And obviously this is coming. That's coming from games. That's coming from like video games a lot, and like role-playing games. And this is the kind of and work at how you can apply that technology to provoke Thor to move in different directions. Yeah, that's one of the things I'm trying to do now. You know, and this speaks to like what I learned from researching die and like writing the die rules and like how can I integrate that? How can I make the best parts of like what games do? And games don't do a lot of the things comics do well, but can you get some of the as you say the texture? I guess.
Yeah. Also, it's really funny to think that when we're talking about the comics stuff, what I told you about the storytelling and music, you're actually the first Brit who has an answer. No, it's neither of that. It's punk.
But things I don't think it's. I mean, like punk is a classic art. I mean, I've done entire comics about punk, like, and I was like. There is the whole kind of like here, the classic, in fact, the comic, I think, in this in Glue, it's like, here's one chord, here's another, here's a third, now form a band. That's a comic. But B, it's like, here's one panel, here's another, here's a third, this is the comic, and comics incredibly lo-fi. But, punk is about a music and an attitude and an approach. And so I don't even, I also, I loathe saying anything is anything because I know it's because the problem with say anything is anything. People always mean it's a metaphor, but then metaphors is a way of making people forget they're only metaphors.
Yeah,
metaphors are not truth.
No, and I love your answer. I think the perfect answer is it depends on the story. It can be it can be any of them. It can be jazz. It depends on what you're thinking about. But also in your case, for example, let me ask you this, because I always think that after I talked to Scott McCloud, it was 3 hours about theory, as you can imagine. And Scott was pointing at the corners of my screen and telling, oh, this is the structuralist, this is the emotionalist, this is blah, blah, blah. And my answer was, why don't we meet in the middle? Why do we have to be something or the other? And that's why I want to ask you, when an idea, when a concept comes to your brain to create a story, does it come from the structure or does it come from the emotion first?
This is one of the things I often like. The McCloud model sort of approach. A lot of that is kind of like, I wouldn't say like I don't mean back to front, but I mean it's what you analyze stuff after the fact and you realize this is where it goes.
Yes.
And I think, and of course,
that's why I'm asking you about the before the fact.
Yeah,
because I know Scott goes to the other side of the window.
But it's what I mean is also the fact that Scott's entirely right. You can't. There's two things which are contradictory. You can't be like do an iconic story at the same time you're doing a detailed story. That you are going to be one or the other. They're just a choice. What I would say is people always ask, where do your ideas come from? And I think my current standard answer is it's a bit like doing a jigsaw puzzle. It's like you solve it. Whatever piece you have is the first piece. Mm-hmm. So like if I've got an idea for a clever structure, something I want to do, I'll either go, okay, and that would work well with this other idea, or this, or maybe what I mean, like that's the piece I have, then I add other pieces to it. Or if I've got like a character, like this emotional, this person. In the case of like diets, it's Peter Pan. It's Peter Pan's disappears into Narnia. Like the idea of you disappear, part of you disappeared as a kid, and that's a character. And then I need like other characters around it. So that's the first piece. So like. And this kind of links back to my other ideas about it can be punk and it can be symphonic music. It can be all these things, and they're all choices. And you make those. So in other words, whatever piece you have first, you think what pieces are complementary. I mean, like something like Eternals, like I had a bunch of ideas, and obviously, like we're still going through the first arc, so I can't really talk about too much where it goes. I certainly can't say what the first piece was, but at the same time, I'm like thinking, okay, I want it to feel epic. Obviously, we've got Esad drawing it, so this, but at the same time, I don't want it to feel like a Thor comic, because just because. Why would anyone read Eternals if they could read Thor? This is, and it has to feel different. So I started playing with, okay, what's something that hasn't been done for a while? And I found myself thinking about third-person narrators, which is like something very old school comics, like Superman flies across the sky. And of course, I kind of wanted to stretch those muscles a bit. But then I realized it wasn't really working. It was feeling like if I was doing too jokey, it felt wrong. And then I hit on the idea of, I'm going to have it narrated by the planet Earth. And the planet Earth is broken, so it's a bit quirky, and this of course gives us this what I think is Eternals' real tone, and it's quite a serious book full of these deeply manipulative, broken, depressed Eternals. But at the same time, the world around them is going mad. So you've got this sort of juxtaposition between the narrator, who is definitely twitchy, but he's also part of the story, because they talk to the narrator and they realize the narrator's broken, and that just gives you kind of the texture of it, and that kind of speaks to the utter, like the catch-22, kind of a Joseph Heller kind of insanity of the world kind of place. You know what I mean? And all that kind of came from my core desire I want to make Eternals feel a bit different. So you think about, okay, is this a good piece? No, this is a bad piece. Is this a good piece? No, bad piece. And then, oh no, this is my piece. And there might have been a better piece over here, but this is the piece I'm going with. And then, okay, what's the next piece?
Did you try to go linear? I mean, when you create a story, do you allow yourself to change something while you're writing, or you set a course and that's the course you're going to follow?
Speaking broadly, I've got an idea. I've normally got a bunch of material, and then I sequence it, and then I kind of work out what other stuff I need. So, actually, Wicked Divine's a good example. Like, if I'm planning a long story, I know where it ends roughly. Like, I know what the Wicked Divine, I knew it ended with all the cast getting together.
Yeah.
Like, and I didn't know where that happened, and that ended up being somewhere completely different than I was thinking. But I knew that as the end point. And I knew what happens at the end of each arc. So end of arc, for arc 1, this happens. End of arc 2, this happens. And then I also knew roughly what each arc was about. So in other words, in this arc, these kind of things happen. Do I know what happens in issue 7? Probably not. But you know what I mean? Like, so it's a bit like I know the Wikipedia synopsis almost. And then every time I get to the arc, I work out exactly how I'm going to do it. And this is the same as Die. Like in Die, I know at the end of the, issue 1's like this. End of issue 5, this. First arc is they're getting to, they're trying to get to where Sol is.
Yeah.
Second arc is the party is split and we follow them as separate ways. End of the second arc, Ash does what Ash does. You know what I mean? So like, there's so much freedom inside. It's like you have so much freedom inside those kind of sections. But the other stuff are like landmarks. It's like I just need to know which direction I'm marching in, because then like whatever route I take, as long as I end up here, I'm fine.
How important are page turns for you?
Pretty. Like I wonder if I actually fetishize page turns too much. Like especially now in a digital world, like for some people, every panel is a page turn. If you're reading on, Guardian View, literally every panel is a page turn, and also every panel is a page turn, even if you're reading on the page. I definitely somebody who thinks in terms of Eddie Campbell. I think said this: a page is stanza. The idea that the page is the primary narrative unit of comics. Yeah, and that's of course is only speaking in comics which are on a page. But yeah, I think about, okay, what does this page feel like? How does this lead to the next? And the implicit tension. Yeah, I mean. I've said this because I've just finished an Eternal script, and I found myself thinking, yeah, you've probably overstressed page turns here. Like, I think there's like 2, maybe even 3 occasions where somebody speaks from off panel on the page turn, and it's a new character entering the scene, and the idea being is who's speaking now? Turn the page, and I may have overdone it, but at the same time, it's a really natural rhythm.
Let me see. Manuel Garcia says your best book, Ares. You work together on that book, just so you know. You remember. Daniel Badosa, hi, Mr. Gillen. So nice to finally see you in the show. Big admirer of your writing. Your love for mythology is clear in your work, just as Wiccan and Divine and Die. If you could be any archetypical god, trickster, sky god, harvester, underworld, that's etc., which one would you be? Thank you.
That's a good one. I think my natural I think the natural role I move is a trickster god. Like there's an element of like playfulness to me. I like outsmarting people. I like playing the game. You know, you can sort of see the I think about this as Alan Moore. Alan Moore, people, you know, when they have those quote unquote angry interviews, people don't often realize how often Alan's joking. You know, Alan is doing a performance. He's trying to make people laugh.
Yeah. I always tell people when they get angry, sorry to interrupt you, like he's been the character he's created over the years. It's not the real Alan Moore. That's the character he knows people is going to jump and bite everything he says. He's playing with you.
Yeah, and it's funny. It makes obviously if you imagine Alan smirking through all the interviews, it makes it. You know, I find Alan Moore very funny in that way. In the same way, like when me at my most pretentious I'm usually laughing as well. So I'm not saying I don't mean it. I just think it's also funny. My basic understanding of the world is irony in terms of like, oh yeah, we're all gonna die and it's horrible, and and I'm still laughing at it. But like that is where I come from. So like the trickster god aspect is very, very, very there. I'm very much a sad clown. So I think that fits the trickster god there. But thank you. That's an interesting question.
Pedro says Ares was freaking great. Yes, they did an amazing book, Manuel and Kieron. Robotman, hi Kieron, greetings from El Salvador. Really loving the Eternals you're doing with Esad Rivich. Are you able to say how long will you stay in the book?
Not really. There were no plans for me to leave at the moment. We're having fun. I was just working on issue 9 yesterday. So like the thing is, at least part of the concept of Eternals is I'm not sure how long I'm going to stay, but I wanted to obviously I've done a lot of setup here. Like there's so much like world building, and my idea coming from Tolkien and Die, I wanted to give the idea that the Eternals backstory stretches off the page. So like in the same way if you're reading Tolkien, there's clearly thousands of pages of history you don't need to read.
Yeah.
But it gives it a weight. So that's what I was doing with Eternal. So like I could stay on this book forever and still be exploring stuff. But at the same time, I could be gone on issue 12 but all this stuff is still there for Marvel. You know what I mean? I view my thing to try to the line I keep on using now is turning continuity into mythology. You know, the idea of taking all the stuff that Marvel have done and thinking, okay, how can I make this feel like mythic? So like, and it's funny because the more we get into it and the more we kind of reveal other aspects of the book, like the more I think people will see it and they'll sort of go, oh, tell us about, Jack of Knives or whatever, or Jack of Blades. Sorry, I forgot which name it is. But yeah, like it is a really big playground and I hope people will be playing it in it for years.
In a way, it is about you having fun, right? While you're having fun, you're going to stay there. The moment you realize you're not having fun is the time to go, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not even that. So there's a case of like, I've done what I need to do here. Like, it's that kind of like, there is that element, and especially if like, occasionally I've got a bit where I know the writer who will be following me is somebody. Oh yeah, I've got to do this. You can do this, and you've got this sorted. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like what I said with Doctor Aphra. Like I thought I wasn't planning to do more Star Wars. Then it was like, oh no, I probably need to set up some. I want to make sure Doctor Aphra is safe. So I did that, but then Sai came along, and it was like, oh, they don't need me anymore. You know what I mean? So like, when you've done enough, I feel okay. But like, I have no plans to leave Eternals at the moment. This is fun.
Yep. Imagine Panicia calls you back and says, "I want you to do a Star Wars again." Could that happen, or that door is just what? I close that door. That's done.
Like, I think it's too soon. You know what I mean? Like, like I generally like. I feel I told all the stories, at least in that period. But never say never. It's like this is I still love Star Wars, and I still have enormous amounts of fun there. But I certainly don't need at the speaking broadly. I like as I said earlier, I like the new quotation marks. So doing something I haven't quite done before is always the appeal. So like that would be less appealing to me for doing name another book, and then I would I've never done it. It's more attractive, and I've sort of done it.
Robotman also asks, when is Uber returning?
I wish I knew. Hopefully there'll be some news maybe this year. Like it is like I've been talking to William. There's sort of stuff in action. But the problem with Uber is, I don't own it. It's like it's a work for hire book, so it's kind of explicitly Avatar's control, and Avatar are getting ducks in the line, as I believe that they like to say, or people like to say. So like as soon as I know, I'll let people know, because obviously people ask me all the time, and I've just got to shrug. And if there's any way for me to finish the book, I will. Like there's only 4 issues left. You know what I mean? I know exactly what happens, and it's really frustrating. And not least because I have no control over this. So hopefully, I'll be able to tell you something soon. And fingers crossed.
She also says here, oh, by the way, thanks to Young Avengers, I discovered the song "Young Hearts Run Free."
I almost put that on this morning actually, and I almost like Street Life as well. That's also on the soundtrack. So I'm glad you're enjoying a high quality disco.
Peter McKelvie says, much of your work is about divine characters, Wicked Divine, Journey into Mystery, Ares, even Eternals. Do you like to humanize gods, or becoming, or let me retranslate. Do you like to humanize gods, or do you like to make humans into gods?
That's a really good question. I think the concept of divinity is a useful filter to examine a lot of things. You know what I mean? Like Wicked Divine was especially. Let's talk about the ideas of creators being gods. Because gods create stuff, and creators by definition create stuff. And like people treat creators like they're not human as well, sometimes for better or worse. So these are ideas that are interesting. And I was the opposite, as in gods who die all the time. That was the other side of it. And like if you look at like Eternals are explicitly not gods. But they've got almost all the attributes of gods, but they're not actually gods, and they don't die. So it's still a book about death. The idea of like going on forever always becomes about death, because it's the opposite, if you see what I mean. So I view like godhood like it's a useful multi-tool device to talk about all different sorts of things. I'm somebody, I was raised Catholic, so obviously there's a lot of stuff like tied up in me. But I'm an atheist now, so I'm interested in gods as a story and as a thing that are useful to people. So yeah, I don't have a single answer for that. It's much like I said that comics can be many things. I think gods can be many things too.
Yeah, and that brings me to another question: how, in your head, how different are the Asgardians and the Eternals? Because they are both gods, non-gods.
I mean, this is part of my original ideas for the Eternals, is they're not, the whole original idea for the Eternals is, they are people who were mistaken for gods. And that doesn't quite work in the Marvel Universe, because it was originally not in the Marvel Universe. So at least part of my idea is, okay, let's not treat them like God. Like, well, yes, we're mistaken, but what they really are is angels. They were created by the Celestials. The Celestials are the space gods in this metaphor.
Yep.
And the deviants are clearly the demons, in which case, what does this make the Eternals? It makes the Eternals the angels. So trying to find their own niche in the Marvel Universe, that was one thing. But also, like, tonally, they're not. Like, when I was writing the Asgardians, I wrote them really as a fantasy construct. I taught them as basically living stories. You know what I mean? I kind of had the Earth X sort of approach to them. So these are creatures of fantasy. These are very clearly supernatural. And with the Eternals, I'm writing them as cosmic angels. You know what I mean? This is all technology. This is, these are all very iconic people. They're like Jungian archetypes. But they are. I try to give it a sci-fi edge to everything. You know what I mean? So just we return to the word texture. The texture is just very different.
Alex DP says, hello, Mr. Gillen. I've always loved your work since I discovered it, and as an IRPGer, Die has just been fantastic. It's the book I recommend to all and any of my fellow role-playing gamers out there, gifting Volume 1 to many of them.
Thank you.
And the Watchmen feature you did was just fantastic. I just watched it again yesterday.
Thank you very much. Like, this is, if you Google, like, I did basically an hour-long speech of like how Watchmen works, like back in 2014, I think. And yeah, I'm glad you like it. I speak very quickly in it, but it's really beautifully shot as well. The camera people did an amazing job.
Victor Racu says, hello, hi everybody from Colombia. Hello, Victor. Dante Crotogini, did Hickman's X books impact Eternals in any way? I asked because of the data pages.
Well, like the main way, obviously, me and John are A, friends, but B, how's the best way to put this? The X-Men proved that Marvel would pay for that. Now, like, in other words, Marvel, previously I've done, like, if you follow my work through, basically John has done more data pages than I did because John's a designer, therefore we can just do them. But like WicDiv is full of data pages. WicDiv has entire issues of magazines. Like with we did that issue of Phonogram, which is literally half a fanzine. You know what I mean? So all like I've sort of always shared with John an interest in that area. But like that John has proved that Marvel will do it, made me go, okay, let me do them too, because I need to do a load of world building. So it's one of those things that I absolutely owe that John has opened that door properly. So like only as far, you're only as far as that. But it's quite interesting, I think, in terms of what we do with the data pages is mostly a little different. Like I think we're quite into them as storytelling. I'll tell you what, that issue of I forget it was Power. It wasn't Powers. It was the other one. But the ending when it's the no more end to the issue, that is such a pure thing we did in WicDiv. We did that whole breaking down to social media after Tarwood's death. Yeah. That the idea of like the design as storytelling, because we talk about data pages, and obviously I think Jonathan still describes them as data pages, but they're not really data pages. They're not just about the information. They're also about presenting information in a different way and ways you can use design as storytelling. I mean, there's a bit in the Eternals issue 3 where we've got a double page spread of like deviant names, and these are all deviant names that are made by the generator I programmed, and it's literally, and you're not meant to read it, it's just meant to, the impression is there were a lot of deviants. And like and we do like one page out of 1600, so the implication is there's a lot more deviants and they all have names and they are all real people. So like there's all sorts of ways you can use text as storytelling. So that's what I'm very glad, very grateful that John has opened up that space in mainstream comic storytelling, because it's fun to play.
And that's also an amazing thing in a way, because it allows different creative views to do data pages, right? I mean, it's not, your creative view is not John's, and John's is not whoever else does it in the end. It's a door open to different creators to do a different vision for that, right?
Yeah, I mean, you can also go back to Watchmen. Watchmen is literally pretty hardcore data pages, and it's that kind of. It's always a device some people have used at different spaces. So like, I think you can have some fun with it. So that's always my thing. And like, I use them in Warhammer as well. So with Warhammer, we did some ones where the data page, it was like half comics and half data. So we kind of split comic pages and used them in an integrated fashion in a different way. You know what I mean? Like, you should be like pushing things on is fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Robotman also says, "Oh, and I really like your Iron Man run. I think it was very underrated. Sorry for so many comments. I am fanboying over here."
Thank you very much, Robotman. That's very kind.
Dante Cotogini, what's happening with Once and Future now that Dan Mora is drawing Batman? Is it on pause, on hiatus?
Yeah, we're back in August, basically. As in, we were quite ahead. So like we've been, I mean, apart from like the COVID break, so apart from, I forget, we must have missed at least an issue or two due to like the COVID. But like we just went straight through to issue 18. We're having a gap now till August. So like the issue 18's just come out like last week. We'll be back in August. So it's like the sort of gaps that Image have between arcs. It's one of them. So yeah, it's all planned. We'll be back then into the next arc, which if you've read issue 18, you kind of know it's a big change of status quo. Lots of stuff happening. Damn scarily quick is the thing. You know what I mean? As well as, this has been scheduled and planned for quite a while and going forward. So it's like Dan's is an amazing drafts person and also producer of work. He makes me very tired.
Okay. What comics are you reading nowadays, Dante asks?
I hate this question. Because my brain immediately freezes up. Made in Korea is out. I think FOC was yesterday. Made in Korea, it's a new book from Image. It's really strong. It's just really, really, really good. Like, what do I like about it? It's just got a great. It's the robot child kind of story in a world where fertility has failed. It's got a really interesting look at details. I don't want to spoil any of it and also it's got a great mood. The art is amazing. Another Image book, Stray Dogs. Stray Dogs. Have you read Stray? Oh, I love Stray Dogs. It's basically got a very kind of all dogs go to heaven kind of John Bluth kind of vibe, but it's like criminal. But it's like, so these dogs have been seemingly kidnapped by a serial killer, but these dogs are all missing their owners or not. Because the thing is, despite them being cute dogs in an awful situation, they're writing dog psychology. So it's not just like they walk around and talk. They do, but they only talk to each other. But they also think like dogs. So there's stuff like their memory doesn't work well.
Yeah.
They don't, and how, so it's a wonderful example of putting these cute animals which are slightly, cartoonized into a situation while still treating them like dogs, which is amazing.
I thought I thought I was the only person reading that book, to be honest.
I read it. It's so delightful. I mean, it's delightful and scary and really emotional. Like, honestly, people should be all over that. I just read. Oh my god, I've forgot James's name. The nice little house on the lake.
James and Albert. Yes.
Yeah, Tinian. Like James Tinian. I mean, he's on a roll. He's really on a roll of really great books, and I think this is his best first issue. And I really like Department. Department's really strong, but this first issue is I don't want to spoil it in any way, but it's got a really beautiful, creepy atmosphere, and people should be all over it. It's really, really strong. That's 3 books off the top of my head. Will that do?
Yeah, that's more than enough. Pedro says your intro in the Eternal comics with the emoji masterpiece. That one.
Thank you. Also, talking Marvel into letting me do that was fun. It's like, no, we have to do it like this. It absolutely sells the book. The fact we've got this narrator who's a bit quirky. We absolutely do this intro, and we have the AI just kind of shrugging. That was absolutely. So I'm glad you liked it.
What was the reaction by the editor?
It's like I think one of it was gone through, and it was like I thought you were joking here, and then the other editor was no, I think it's a great idea, we should do it, and I was like yes, but it's like all things. So Marvel, bless their cotton socks, they let me get away with a lot in terms of the editors all say, are you sure about this? And plus a lot of my scripts say, okay, this is my worry here, let's talk about this. So I'm always trying to think about how things could be problematic, especially in all sorts of ways, especially with something like the Eternals. But the conversations are really good and useful, I think.
Hector G says, I love you, Kieron. Greetings from Mexico.
Hello. Hopefully we'll be back at some point.
Dante says, did Hickman try to get you to write any of the X books?
It's like my favorite thing about probably one of the few good things about last year and the year before was me and Hickman flirting about the X book online, in terms of just joking about this, in terms of try to get me to write an X book implies that Hickman just gets me in an alleyway and holds me up against the walls and, come on, Kieron, you're going to do an X book. It's not like that. So it's like
that would be fun anyway. It would be fun.
It's pretty fun. That's how I like the idea of Jonathan kidnapping people and forcing them to do X books. As in, he's going to burst through this window and drag me away. But I don't. It's like dig it out on Twitter and see what me and Jonathan will be up to. But so the X line at the moment is astounding. I'm actually up to date on it all. It's such a really great selection of voices. I love the energy and the kind of the obvious camaraderie all the books have for each other. And it's obviously your size Way of X just dropped, which is really strong. X Corp, is X Corp come out yet?
Yeah.
X Corp.
I think the first issue. If it's not this month, it's the next month. Yeah.
I get all the PDFs of Marvel in advance, so I kind of lose track. So I always got to be careful about what spoilers have happened.
Yes. Let's just consider it's not out yet, just in case, because I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's right. I'm always careful, but X Corp's really good, and it's there's a really strong line of books there.
We've been talking a lot about your create your own books and the books that you create for for Marvel. Do you use different muscles for your own create your own stuff and for the corporation own stuff, or is the same ones used in a different way?
They're all a different kind of workout. All my books, Once a Future is a very different book to Die, and it's a very different book to say Phonogram or Eternals. And at least one of my favorite things about comics is that I can change between books. So it's not like if I was a novelist, I'll be writing this one voice for 9, 10, a year, 2 years, 3 years, however long it took. And that sounds like hell to my brain. But with comics, if I can write 4 books a month safely. And they can be very different. I was writing Young Avengers and Uber at the same time. You know what I mean? And they are 2 books abstractly in the same genre, but they could not be any more different. So it's they definitely all use different muscles. Now, I always come back, but in terms of specific, if we speak very broadly about create around and work for hire, there's a Scott Snyder quote. He said this. I was on a panel with him, and it's the difference to him between work for hire and create our own books is with work for hire, you've got this thing that people care about intensely. like Batman or Daredevil or Spider-Man. And everyone cares about it intensely. You've got to find a way to care about it. Because conversely, with Create Your Own Book, you've got something you find intensely you care about, and you have to find a way to make anyone else give a monkey. And that is the core dynamic. So there is a bit like, also the second one is the kind of, with Whip High, you're being brought in, and you're very I don't often, you're brought in as a skill set, and I don't pitch anybody work for hire. It's not that I never go to someone and say, I've got an idea for this character, let's do it. I'm always, I wait for people to come to me, and then I'll stop and think about it, because I don't think thinking about other people's property is a good use of my time. I only like doing stuff which I have quote unquote control over. So early on, people say, Kieran, got an idea for a Beta Ray Bill story. And then I'll sit down and think, have I got an idea for a Space Moose story? And then you really then you dig into it deeply. And you just basically take Beta Ray Bill or any character and just break, okay, what's it about? So you really, really think about it hard. And that's a different kind of skill set. You know what I mean? Because it's like detective. It's like, it's part of my, I used to be a critic. So it's my critic brain. So I kind of go in and think about, okay, what makes this tick? And okay, what appeals to me about it? What do I think other people might care about? And then it becomes a story. So it's you're more like, I used to joke, it's like you're like a plumber, you're hired help. You're here to look, you're a nanny, you're not a parent, you're a nanny. But it's the Sistine Chapel is work for hire, it's that kind of thing. He was, Michelangelo comes in, can you do a ceiling? Says the Pope. Michelangelo goes, ooh, I could sort out that ceiling, give me a couple of years. The Pope goes, I was hoping for just some Artex, just a bit of plaster. No, I've got a better idea. You know what I mean? But still, he came to the problem. The problem was, I need a ceiling covered. Can you do this? And then he did it in his own way. You know what I mean? So that is work for hire. It's been hired to be do something. Whilst Create Your Own is starting from a blank sheet of paper and building everything. So that's a very different kind of muscle.
Go, please.
No, I think it just stopped us. And it's hard, Create Your Own is just harder. And I don't and I don't mean that when I say harder, I don't mean because you put less work in. It's just that there's less work you can put in. Actually, that's also not true, because with work for hire, there's different kinds of work around the edges. It's with Create Your Own, and Once in the Future, I don't have to phone Jonathan Hickman and ask him what he's doing with the X-Men. There's more the kind of space. Actually, politics is both right. The politics implies it's adversarial, but the organizational stuff around it is more complicated.
Yeah, no, because in a way, in one of them you have to build your own world, but in the other you have to care for somebody else's world. But it's a world anyway, right?
It's definitely for me. I think one of the reasons why I get on quite well with comics is I'm very good at making myself care. And I won't write something when I don't care about it intensely. So it's when I sit and do the deep dive, it's this, okay, even stuff I didn't care about to begin with, if I put the work in, I will come out and go, oh yeah, I've got something I'm really, really intensely believe in. Which is it's a curse, because it's at the same time, you've also got to have these I describe them as emotional contraceptives. If you I said earlier, that nanny line, because your book can be cancelled at any time. Your book could be given to someone else. You don't own this book. This isn't yours. So you have to simultaneously love it intensely, whilst also know you've got to be able to say goodbye. And that is a different set of emotional muscles.
How often have you thought, okay, I'm done with work for hire, I'm not coming back, just to be lured back and into doing something because it's just appealing, as you said, appealing to you?
Yeah. I'm about to say, what time is it? Well, only 3 times today so far. No. It's for me, I'm pretty good at, because I know I get bad when I get bored. And it's normally and when I get bored, scripts are harder to write.
Yeah.
I run on enthusiasm. I've got a sort of brain that really attaches to new problems. So I've always deliberately stopped doing things when I see things are sort of, hopefully a year before it'd be actually really hard. Towards the end of Star Wars, I was aware that this is getting harder to write now. I should get out of here.
Yeah.
In the same way, at the end of, I stopped Marvel as well. When I was doing the Marvel Universe, that last year, I just started doing Star Wars. And I instantly realized, oh my, Star Wars is so much fun. And this Marvel superhero stuff is so hard to do now. This is a really bad sign. You've got to stop doing Marvel superheroes. Plan your exit now. So like some of it is like changing between work for hire, and there was definitely a time like my whole Star Wars career, as I sort of mentioned, I was trying to stop and just do create your own for a while, and that didn't happen because Star Wars kind of lured me back in again. But at the end of Star Wars, I stopped and did only create your own for quite a while, and I said no to a lot in that too. And to us, I got good at it. I said like no to certain dream jobs. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But after a certain amount of time, it was like I did the Peter Cannon book with Casper for Dynamite, which is like a book. It didn't sell enormously, but it's a book which I'm incredibly proud of. And this part of it was I owed a favor in that kind of way, as in not a favor. I promised to do a book at Dynamite, and I could never find the time to do it. And then my schedule opened up, and it was like, well, I'm not doing work for hire anymore, and that just felt rude. You know what I mean? I felt it was like some kind of tease. So I was like, no, honestly, let's do this. So I did it, and I loved it. And it also reminded me I like superheroes, because it had been maybe 7 or 8 years, maybe like 6 or 7 years by that point. So I'd had actually maybe just 5 years, but I had a break from that. And it reminded me, okay, maybe you have got something to say with superheroes still. So we got to that point where Marvel approached me. That's why I did Eternals and Warhammer. And it was that kind of, I got to that point. This is actually maybe why, this is probably the biggest influence about the X-Men and Hickman. Like Hickman came in and did X-Men. I thought, that looks fun. And it's almost like the fact that Jonathan was clearly getting to be Jonathan on a large scale was like, this looks fun. I could do it. You know, that kind of reminded me of that. So I'm pretty good at saying no for work for hire now, unless I really want to do it.
Roman says, any advice for upcoming writers? Any habits you could recommend?
Like advice, if you Google Kieron Gillen writer master post on my Tumblr, it's like a guide. There's a guide to a bunch of stuff up there. Also, there's a tag called writer advice. So click through that, you'll get a lot more. Follow my newsletter. Like I've got a newsletter, like it's not on Substack. I've moved from Substack. It's on Button Down, but it's linked on my Twitter profile. I'm always giving writing advice. Like there's always lots of stuff in there and stuff to think about. Really, a lot of it is just do it. I mean, my kind of standard advice for comic writers is like really don't worry about breaking in. Worry about being good, and also you can learn to be good. Like I can't draw, you know, in that classic way, but I have completely done like a 300-page photographic novel. Like, you know, it was, and I did it over chapters over like 2 years. Was it a year? Might have just been a year. And it was like, it's not any good. But the entire point is it taught me a lot about how comics work. And you learn how to write comics by doing comics and by meeting other people who are doing comics. And that kind of like, and also the important lesson that teaches you is when you're writing a comic, you're not just writing for a magic device that makes pictures. You're writing for an artist. So if you're writing for yourself and you can't draw, you've got to do a comic that works with your level of skill. So like, you know, XKCD, of course, it works on stick figures. So you, as a comic writer, think, okay, these are the art assets I have. How can I turn it into a comic? That's a really useful skill. And it'll teach you much more than just sitting and dreaming. Like, because the other side is you've got to love comics, and not just like superhero comics or the big ones or anything. The point, you know, just the basic pure love of what two pictures put by each other can do. You know, that's what I encourage you. I encourage you just try it. And also, I said montage. I did some montage comics. So, you know, taking, you know, what is a meme but a comic? You know, and there's so many other options now for like generating art and like filters and whatever. Just, you know, find a way to make comics. I wish you luck.
Yeah, that's also takes me to another question, which is there any limit from your point of view to what a comic is?
Oh, I don't like putting boundaries in, just because I think most hard lines are tricky. Generally speaking, comics, the second if there's animation, it's not a comic. As in, like, that's my not that I care, as in something like some things can include comics and be closer to animation, and they're still great. But the core thing of comics to me is images juxtaposed against each other. Like that. And the second you take the magic of, you take the movement from the page, you know, because the movement's meant to be in the people's mind. And if you put the movement actually there, you become a slightly different medium. That's where I put the boundary of comics.
Okay, and do you think there is any limit to the stories comics can tell?
Probably, but like, but there's limits everything can tell, and it might just because I'm not smart enough to figure out the problem. You know what I mean? The point of a medium is to explore and see what it can do, and also most mediums are better at some things than others. You know, that's all mediums tell different stories better. I mean, novels are very good at like taking you inside somebody's mind.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, and you'll get the you know, there's articles I've read about the concept of human empathy increasing after the novel. So because after people were more conscious about other people thinking, people were aware that other people thought like they did or different to they did.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so but like, and games are like actually. Games are good at like environment, like storytelling is. So the idea of like in a video game, you could have a texture of this bookshelf behind me, and every book would be in there, and people could actually just explore. So you can tell a story via that thing there. But if you're in a movie, you could show it, but you'd have to pause the thing to stop people, you know, to make it look. You couldn't do it in the same way. You know what I mean? So that's a weakness of film compared to games.
Yeah.
In comics, the same. You know, comics are lots of things they're better at and worse at. Comics are interesting because they're like quite as a bastard form. You can have like you can have elements of prose which is useful in a way which, you know, you have certain attributes from other things and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the funny thing. Again, when talking to Scott McCloud, we both ended the conversation saying there is the fun thing that we think that makes comics more alive than any other medium is that there's no limits in terms of when somebody says you can't do this in comics in terms of the format or anything. A new generation is going to come and just say, what? Wait, what? We can do what? And just break it. And comics keep evolving. While other media is stable, comics are not. Any new generation makes them new again. Do you agree on that?
Yeah, I would say like the shock of the new is still exciting. You know what I mean? That's me exciting. It's like I've certainly got friends who think new is overrated. And like, and I kind of see the argument. The argument is new does not mean good. But my broad take is all good things start as being new.
Yeah.
Like, and also new has a quality of its own. You know what I mean? New, and these are, you know, a lot of those people I'm thinking, you're just kind of justify being a bit boring. But that's me being a bit catty.
Yeah. No, but I agree. You know, to be good, first you have to be new. If you don't try it, you are not going. Even if it's bad, if you don't try it, it's never going to happen. You have to roll the dice. Maybe it's going to be good. Maybe it's going to be bad. But bad teaches you. You know, as comedians, as stand-up comedians say, it's not the joke you see. That joke you see on the stand-up. I've tried it 45 million times until it worked.
No,
right?
Absolutely.
So like, it's got to be bad before being good, right? In a way.
That's true. You're absolutely right, and it's like, I think obviously trying the new is really exciting. I mean, it's just fun, you know. They're also, for me, it's always like it's just more entertaining to see. Like as a reader, actually, this is one of the things me and Jamie wants to do in Young Avengers and Wictive. The idea being that just the excitement of what could be in the side of this issue, and that's the kind of like people not like, you know, just knowing that we could do something different. And I suppose, and of course, there's also stories which are amazing, which work very well because they've got they've got a rhythm you expect. It becomes invisible almost. I mean, sort of like Saga. I mean, Saga keeps the shocks for the story and keeps a very clear and pure and beautiful story. You know what I mean? Like, these are all different choices and ways of doing it. Whilst, like in Wictive, we're quite explicitly about slapping people around the head. Like, hey, we can do this. You know, all other. Also, you can do this. At least part of Wictive was like, since me and Jamie both are latecomers to comics, we've got, I think, almost like a need to say, look at comics. Look at this. This is awesome. You know, it's a great medium.
Yeah. Has it ever happened to you that your characters, you know, your first arc, fine. Second arc, peachy. Third arc, suddenly your characters are like, nope, that's not me. That's wrong. I'm not letting you do it. And you're fighting the characters saying, hey, I'm your creator. Screw you, you're going to do what I'm telling you. And the characters are like, no, even you don't change it, it's not going to happen. And you feel like forced to change the ending or something like that. Has it happened to you or not?
I must admit, less so than, like, I've definitely heard writers personify their writing like that. And it's less like that for me. It's in that kind of like, I think it's partially because like my actual material is more often not based on specifics and more based around broader, actually where they are emotionally. Like, and I tend to, take characters and boil them down to this is what they're about. Like, this character's about this conflict between this emotion and trying to navigate that. And then it comes out how it chooses to express in its context. But quite often, like, you have a mixture of stuff but then you've got stuff where you're leaving spaces. And I'm very aware, especially with Wictive, like, my final year was, like, I knew certain characters' endings perfectly. But there's other characters were, like, literally left, I don't know. And my sort of planning, though, was solve the equation. Because, like, for Wictive, it's very complicated. It all interlinks. But it's like, and I knew the big parts of the ending. But at the same time, to make it work, you have to, quote unquote, solve the equation. And the idea, okay, how do these characters' arcs delineate their fundamental truth? And I did, certain major character beats were less about them telling me, but more like, oh no, that's where they go.
Okay.
So yeah, I must admit, like, yeah, I think I'm a little bit, I tend to step back a little from, so I don't really think about especially because characters surprise me all the time. That's the joy. Actually, this is the flip, because people talk about, like, my characters deny me. What people don't talk about as much is when you know what the characters are going to, this character has to do this, then you're surprised by how they do it. Like, there's this, like, I was plotting Wictive, this bit where Dionysius, who is like the god of parties, and he's been dragged down by the good guys to join their rebellion. And in my plotting, it's like they talk Dionysius into joining the attack. And I have no idea how they're going to do that. So I write this scene, and Baphomet and Morgan pitch it, and he, Dionysus just completely shrugs. Like, they sort of shrug it off. Then the character Minerva, who's like the youngest of the characters, says, "They've got my mum and dad. Please help me." And Dionysus he's in. You know what I mean? Because he's a good guy. And then this is the bit that most surprised me is he goes, "Oh, by the way, I'm Dionysius. I'm pleased to meet you." So that kind of, like, both he's in it just for the emotion, but then he immediately turns to the human politeness and, like. This is about, you know what I mean? That's what's delightful. The bits where you kind of, like, it's not the characters surprise you, but also they just come through and do it. Because maybe on some subconscious level, you knew how this scene would play out.
Yeah. Anyway. So sometimes it just flows not from your direct trying to make it flow that way, but about why the character should do it, right? You build the characters a certain way so they react the natural way you expect, more than you're trying to force them to do it, right?
Yeah. I mean, like that. Yeah, but I mean, plus, like, when I'm planning the big level plotting, it's more like how the core of the character makes sense for that moment. Like. Especially, I said, it's like the fact they're quite malleable to begin with. I said the other thing is discovering. I mean, this is the joy when you talk about discovering a character. Like, you're writing them and you suddenly realize, oh yeah, this character hates this TV show, or, like, something really, really small, but you realize, oh no, they definitely hate it. Whilst their best friend likes it, and like you could plan that in advance. And that's the thing is, if you plan that much stuff in advance, that's when I think you get into trouble. Because if you decide that they hate Breaking Bad at the beginning, you don't know that. You don't know this character. You have not lived with this character for years. If you lived with them, you get that, oh no, their favourite Pixies album is not Doolittle. They like Surfer Rosa. Like, kind of, that stuff.
Yeah, and it can become stale, right? In a way, because you try to force the character to like or dislike something you like or dislike. But that's the character can go in a different direction, right?
Yeah, my pet hate is actually writers who make their characters like the music they do.
Yeah. Oh my god. Yes. Same thing.
Yeah. Also, characters who like better music than they should. When I say better music, quotation marks. You know what I mean? Like more hit music. I'm like, oh no, I'm pretty sure most superheroes have bad taste in music. Like, you know what I mean? Like, most superheroes are not people who hang around, like, reading styles or going through Discovery. Like, they're just not. They're too busy out fighting crime, and like that's it's funny because obviously there's a lot of music in my books, but like my characters rarely share my opinion.
Yeah.
or if they do, they share a very small bit of my opinion. Like, you've got, like, I don't know, Marvel Boy talking about the Ronettes drums sound or whatever, and that's like, okay, that's almost taking the piss out of myself, really.
That's like, I don't remember the book. But or somebody told me a story about Batman listening to Mozart's Requiem, and I was like, no, Batman wouldn't do that. Like, right, he's too impatient. He would be out, just kicking Joker's ass. So and we had a big discussion, 3 writers and myself, about what could Batman do.
That's a good question. Like, things about Batman's quite flexible. As a character, I know Batman has people have very strong ideas what their Batman is, but I know what you mean. It's like the more like at the same time you can imagine Mozart playing Mozart's Requiem playing as he does stuff, but you can't imagine him putting it on. Unless, actually, Batman could put it on loudly to scare the bad guys. Yeah, you know what I mean, like, what's scarier than Mozart's Requiem playing than Batman appearing?
that makes a lot of sense. Batman just doing something around Alfred. Alfred coming to the Batcave while Batman is typing or something, and just putting it on, so he has something in the background while Alfred is cleaning. Around the Batcave, and Batman reacting like, "Oh, that's good, and then some bad guy coming and it's like, "Don't get it all. I want to beat them with it on the background." It just works.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, Batman is Mozart rather than Batman would not. Batman doesn't need to listen to Mozart. He is Mozart.
Yes. Absolutely. Okay. See, we see that idea. Honestly, we just talked about Mozart and Requiem and Batman, and we were like, it was like 3 writers and myself, like 3 hours just talking about this. It's just Batman, it just gives you that possibility of, as everybody was saying, the good thing with Batman is that he's so flexible. You can use Requiem, Mozart, and Batman in 5 different ways. Jonathan Lemos says, greetings from Papaya in Colombia, David and Kieron. Any advice for aspiring writers? We already said that, but there's a part that I'm interested in, especially how would you work in regards to the research process?
Obviously, people seem to think, okay, I've had multiple people say I do more research than most writers, and it always makes me feel bad because I'm thinking, oh no, I don't. I feel like I do the bare amount. But then I look at my shelves and see I must have read at least 50 books for Die. You know what I mean? And that's a lot. And I think
I don't want to be a bad person here, but yeah, it's a lot.
Just saying. There's something about me. I used to be a journalist. There's something I really like grounding my stuff in ideas, and I also like and it makes me feel less of a fake. I think, speaking broadly, know when to start writing, I guess, because they're definitely. I mean, this is not very interesting because every writer says this. I think it's very easy to get lost in the research hole, and it's part of it. It's like you're reading to be inspired. The important thing is you'll not use most of it. Try not to just stop and tell people useful research. To be honest, I mess this up all the time. I'm very into telling people, "Let me tell you about this," because once again, it's me as a journalist. Mm-hmm. But most people seem to not like that. On the other hand, I do, so maybe you can get away with it. For me, one of the interesting about the research is, if you're doing a research-heavy project, and I've done some very heavy research projects, like Free, the book I did about Sparta, involved me actually going to the academia text. It involved me talking with professors. You've got to care about it. You know what I mean? This is the thing. When we were making up Wictive, we were very aware that this, the book, ideally is going to take us 5 years to do. And one of the things all the great Vertigo series did was they were a big idea, but they were also flexible. Mm-hmm. So in other words, they could clearly include anything the writers became obsessed over. Like when Gaiman was doing Sandman, I know Gaiman had a very strong plan for Sandman from the start, but at the same time, he could do all these kind of, any story I can go anywhere and do anything with. That's a big idea. So in the same way, in Wictive, we're it's about all human history. So we could do a story in any period of time. So I could research, and I want to do these historical stories, but I'm only ever going to do a historical story about a period I'm interested in. So it's got to be the research became both obviously a lot of research. Most of the historical specials were about a year of reading. Now I don't mean just constant reading, but for about a year before the Roman one, I was reading Roman stuff. And it's because I wanted to read about Rome. And I get this speaking broadly. And for us, quite a lot when doing the research is I would encourage this flipping it around and not doing research for projects. I would always encourage writers to read very broadly. Mm-hmm. And okay, I need to know. Last year I read a bunch of stuff, a history of China. I wanted to be able to name the dynasties in order. And because I didn't know enough of the history of China. I could not put the I don't know, the Qin and the Song dynasty the right way around. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't be able to name those names effectively. But now I did this, you know. And if I was in a better place, I'd probably be wanting to set a story in China now. But you know what I mean? Like, there's so many. It's a virtuous circle at its best. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, absolutely. Dante Cortogini says, I have a question about the way you wrote Mr. Sinister. Why did you decide to redesign him in such a dramatic way instead of creating a new character altogether? That is one of the best things about Marvel and DC, though, the additive nature. Thanks to the way you revamped Mr. Sinister, he's been a blast since House of X, Powers of 10, especially the way Seb Wells writes him.
I must say, Hellions is one of my favourite books in the X Office. It's really, it's a delight, and Sinister is a joy there. It's tricky, like, obviously, with what I did with Sinister was quite, as you say, quite radical. But for me, it was quite similar to Eternals. Like, what I've done with Eternals is pretty radical, but at the same time, I felt everything I did with Sinister is in Sinister.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, basically, it was me following what I felt was a problem. The problem with Mr. Sinister was he felt like a character was quite ill-defined, as in he was invented, obviously, by Claremont, and then basically spent the entire 90s and a bit longer, like, doing these, always working towards a big plan, and they never really said what the plan was.
Thank you.
You know what I mean? Like, he's just hanging around, being sinister. And it's because, of course, the writers kept on changing and all, and it's like, no, let's get.
You knew he had a big plan because he's sinister.
Yeah, exactly. I want something in the shadows, and I'm like, no, let's make it. He's doing something. Let's drill down and give a Sinister a reason to do stuff. So basically, I did what I did with Eternal. So I went and read a load of Mr. Sinister. I read his in canon origin, which is done by Milligan. And looked at and of course, like I said, this guy was around in the 19th century. He's a Victorian. You know what I mean? Emotionally, he's a Victorian. Yeah. So I ended up reading a lot about the Enlightenment, the idea of a lot of the imperialism. So he was a guy. He knew Darwin. He's a that kind of. There's all that kind of stuff. So I wanted to bring that all together. And I got the idea, like, all that 19th century eugenics, all that 19th century determinism.
Yep.
I did that whole issue in Uncanny X-Men when I was riffing on Notes from Underground, the Dostoevsky novel, and that novel is specifically about mocking the European idea of this kind of like deterministic world, So all those kind of stuff, you know what I mean? I just wanted to give Sinister something. And the other thing I also did, and this is something I've tried to do, is I try to make it, as you say, additive. Like, Sinister, somebody's also changed himself in certain ways.
Mm-hmm.
So in other words, like, this is a personality. It's pretty much injected a personality. It's like, okay, I'm going to be like this now. And like, I was always aware that if somebody wanted to bring back another Sinister, it's a different clone. He's somebody who can literally reboot the hard drive in different ways. And that's, for me, that's why he's Sinister. He's somebody, if you go back to his original origin, he's basically, to get over the grief of losing his family, he annihilated himself.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're left with this thing. And you feel that there's, there's obviously, like, he was always a kind of queer coded character anyway. So I turned the dial up on that. I said, no, let's embrace the fact we've got this gloriously camp supervillain who's having a hell of a time.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So there's a lot of this is one of the things I think about, like, superhero stuff is people are, we said earlier about Batman, everyone's got their own take on Batman. For me, with Sinister, it's like, I think Sinister has not worked as well as I think he should have.
Mm-hmm.
Let's give a strong take on Sinister. You know what I mean? Like, this is, for me, I felt I was just using all the ingredients were there. He's like a glam rock supervillain. He's called Mr. Sinister, for God's sake. But let's take all this and just turn the dial up and see if we can, we'll give him a motivation. We'll make him like, there's a reason why he's been doing genetics. He's very into mutants for this reason. He's basically views himself as a replacement species, I think, the idea I used.
Mm-hmm.
I got especially the idea of like him using the mutants as technology. So I love what Jonathan has done in terms of the idea of the chimeras. That stuff's great for me. You know what I mean? So, like, for me, it felt like a natural extension of Mr. Sinister, and I hoped other people would like it and it would catch on, and I'm very glad it did.
Mm-hmm.
You can understand my delight when I saw Jonathan using something very clearly inspired by the sort of work I was doing in Secret Wars. You know what I mean? So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, absolutely. And what would be Sinister's favorite music or soundtrack?
Oh, I was thinking about. I think it's like Enigma. He like Elgar. He's like a 19th century. Sorry, that circa when I was writing it, as in circa my Uncanny run, it would be, you know, Elgar, Enigma, the variations, that kind of like Land of Hope and Glory, Jerusalem, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I think present Sinister has had enough tweaks in his personality. Like he's a little bit more modern. You know what I mean? Like, so I would have. The fact I'm not writing him at the moment means that I would not be able to make the call of what present Sinister would be listening to. Something loud and annoying. It's funny. I always like when I'm reading Sinister at the moment. I imagine he's a bit like Deadpool with a PhD. You know, imagine if Deadpool had read a few books.
Okay, I absolutely love that. Daniel Badosa says, I got a hunch you would consider yourself a trickster god. Continuing from the previous question. As usually, they are good storytellers and writing is an act of lying. Following that question, what would be your god's name?
I could have said the sad clown. I don't know. What would be my god's name?
Okay, I'm going to make it more difficult. What would be your god's name and what would be Jamie's?
I can't say Jamie. All my ones for Jamie are insulting. I think I'm more like to have a dog name than a god name. You know, that kind of like I'm definitely closer to like the Great Labrador. There's something like they're very much like the licking idiot energy of me. That'll do.
Okay.
Of course, the long-haired Labrador. It's like a shaggy dog story. You know what I mean?
Okay, I'll take it. It's fine. Let me see. And then James Reddington is saying, enjoying Kieron's work and this talk. Thank you, James, for watching, listening, whatever, to my crazy talk. And Daniel Bados says, what is your opinion of magic as a storytelling medium? Alan Moore and Grant Morrison are famous for their own take on magic and how they apply it to the writing. Do you have any beliefs about it?
There's a quote. We put quotes on the back of Die every issue. There's a quote by Alan about if you look down to it, magic and fantasy are virtually indistinguishable. And I can sort of go along with that. My kind of take, like, I'm a hard materialist. I don't believe in anything. I think supernatural is a contradiction in terms. Like, if it exists, it's natural. Like this, I can certainly believe there's things we don't know about, but then that's still just part of the natural phenomenon. However, the point about magic, and this is, I think, I must say I'm less up to date where Grant is at the moment, but in terms of Alan is like the one place that the gods definitely exist is up here. And there's definitely magic. There's a lot of ritualism in what I do, and it's not because I believe it is magic in the way that most people would talk about it, but I just believe it works. Like I believe in like neurological programming, and I believe in all manner of use of memes as effects, that kind of thing. So like it is so weird. There are certain like magical, there's enough sort of magic stuff in the way I do things to be aware that I'm kind of like, I can easily imagine myself slipping into it.
Yeah.
But my fundamental thing is like, I think this is something I think Grant said. They were saying, if it works, it works. That's these kind of effects that these people are kind of chasing are that. So you don't really need to believe in magic. It's just like, we'll try it.
And also Grant, when I had him here, people started asking him really complex questions about that. And I remember, some conversations what we've had while having dinner at cons or something. And by the end of it, Grant literally told me, any act of creation is magic. That's what magic is for me. That's it.
Yeah. This is like, I mean, Alan is the same, where the more you do this job, the more you think, where do ideas come from? And that leads to magic. So I'm interested in the thinking around it, and I'm certainly interested in some degree the practice. Especially like people with Phonogram. Like one of the things I remember, like with early in Phonogram, had not a lot, but some people come up and say, "Oh, I'm really interested in people putting their own magic system into the world." And me and Jamie sort of looked at each other, going like, "We just made it up." Not that we said that, but the point being is like what Phonogram is talking about is a magical way of seeing music and also using music. Like how I described earlier, like if I put on, the Gowns record, I am inducing a mental state that allows me to write Die. In what way is that not a spell? And I just, if I was more magically minded, I would say it was a spell. But in my case, I'm just using it as one. You know what I mean? What is the difference between somebody who doesn't think they're a magician who actually tries to cast magic? That's interesting stuff for me. No, I'm not about to become a wizard.
And How does that match with Arthur C. Clarke's concept? And I'm pretty sure you know it, that magic is the science that we don't understand yet.
I'd say sufficiently advanced fiction is indistinguishable from magic, would be my take now.
Mm-hmm. And what do you think about that?
Like, well, it's a truism. Like, I think there's an important, useful perspective in there. Like, so I'm trying to work out something actually interesting to say. I'm not sure there's much to be done because it's just true, isn't it? Like, the idea of like what we don't understand would appear to be magic, but like, I think that the weakness of the statement is Arthur C. Clarke is very interested in science. He's not very interested in magic.
Yes.
When he's saying magic, he's not saying like what Alan or Grant means by magic.
Not at all.
Yeah, he's saying like he's thinking about Gandalf.
Okay, nothing to say against.
You know what I mean? Like, what he means is, does it mean? Well, actually, it doesn't mean magic. He means miraculous, is what the word he means. I think. Hating to edit him, but
he wants to cling into facts as a scientist. He is, but he doesn't consider the other side of it. He's thinking about the wizards of, as you said, Gandalf. So he's not thinking about a lot of other things that are more connected to the earth.
Exactly.
Drinking Costa Rica says, hello from Costa Rica, great to be here. May I ask, which is the ingredient you believe must be included in order to reinstate a healthy and successful X-Men franchise in the Marvel Cinematic Universe? There, an easy question for you.
Okay, what's the ingredient? The ingredient you need to reinstate a healthy and successful X-Men franchise into the MCU is some X-Men, I would imagine. That's as far as I'm going to go. You definitely need some X-Men. Apart from that, no, joking aside, it's like, no, I said earlier, I don't think about stuff I don't own. That would be an example. Like, I would be off the top of my head making stuff up. But, like, it's not that hard. Like, the X-Men are incredibly popular characters. It's fairly easy. Especially the joy of mutants is, the origin of mutants is they just start appearing. You know what I mean? Like, there are much harder things to integrate in the Marvel Universe than the X-Men, as far as I'm concerned. Like, what they did with Black Panther has been amazing. Like, I thought Black Panther was hard. I thought Thor was hard, and they worked out ways to make them work really well. So, like, they've got really smart people over there. They'll work it out if they want to do it.
I always answered, drink and draw. My answer to that is they have Wolverine. What they need is Wolverine, and then the rest. So they have Wolverine.
It's not a major problem. You just have a guy with claws turn up.
Exactly. Let's have the guys. Somebody pops the claws in the middle of a Marvel Cinematic Universe. Boom, that's it.
Can you imagine the crowd going mad at literally, like, I don't know, Avengers 4 or something? Like, someone just turns up at the end. Who the hell are you? I think that's why they are not in any rush. With the X-Men, it's like, you know what? They got burned with Fox. We have time. I think they are a lot more worried about how are we going to integrate the Fantastic Four. They're hard. I mean, they're tricky sell. I'm sort of squinting and thinking here. Like, I don't think I'm in any position to speculate about any of this because it's just kind of like there's always so many moving pieces in there.
Yeah, absolutely. I saw that trailer they got yesterday with the old stuff and the new stuff, and the 4 by the end of it. And the only thing I kept thinking is they don't say a word about. They just say the Fantastic Four is going to happen, but nothing. They must be in that office thinking. How the hell are we going to make this work? So in that sense, I believe they have a lot more hesitation with that than, as we said, with the X-Men. X-Men is pop the claws, people gels.
The interesting about Fantastic Four is the Fantastic Four does so much in terms of the existing material is based around the idea that they are the founding people in the universe. That's in other words, the Fantastic Four being first is important to the Fantastic Four in a way that it's not relevant to the X-Men. Yeah. So it's a tricky job. I mean, like, the FF is I mean, like, on the other hand, it's also quite self-contained. It's not like, for example, Young Avengers. That's a hard one to do because Young Avengers is like any of the existing material involves a load of Avengers being parents, which immediately ages them. Like, Young Avengers is hard. Fantastic Four, it's hard to do well, but it's easy to do, if it makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. But also with the X-Men, you can just use I know it's a trope, but you know what? Thanos explain that created the mutants for whatever way. You find a way to explain it. But with Fantastic Four, if they were there first, how do you explain that? That's the fascinating part. I want to see if they go that route, saying they were here first. This is why you didn't see them, or they completely skip that. If they skip that and they are not the founding fathers, how do you tell the story? Yeah. So it's gotta be difficult. It's gotta be difficult, I guess.
You can definitely. I mean, there's a level of like them as. I mean, the great job of Fantastic Four is they are a useful explorer. They have a plot engine. They're explorers. See, part of me always thinks like I'm saying this right now. I would make the Fantastic Four as a TV show rather than a movie, because they are classic adventurers. They're people who do stuff, and they actually fit well in episodes. You know what I mean? Like, and so I'm thinking that's like I've never thought about doing. You know, this is literally me thinking in front of you. So this is not something I've in any way. No,
absolutely not. And it makes absolute. I haven't thought about it. Right? It makes absolute sense.
Yeah,
I think you have a full season. You know, like WandaVision, 6, 7, 8, 9 episodes, which is one of the explorations. You have, the whole Galactus and Silver Surfer. You can have it there, in one season.
Yeah, and especially because there's so much about the family drama, the sitcom element of, there is something really like modular about them. I mean, I thought this when I'm not. It's Star Wars Day. I wasn't a fan of the Solo movie. Like, it was one of my least favorite, the new ones. Like, but the thing I came away from Solo was how much I felt that Han Solo would have worked better as like Mandalorian level. Like Han Solo, for me, the point of Han Solo was the biggest thing that ever happened to him was that day in the first movie. So the idea of Han Solo having Han Solo is just a dude. You know what I mean? For me, Han Solo is like, he's just a dude. It's like, oh my God, what's happening now? And so the more he's seen before, the less you get that kind of confused look to him. But the idea of like Han Solo being really ground level, but really like crimey, that's a TV series. That's not like the scale of a and that spoke to what I feel about Han Solo.
Yeah, in a way that's some of those movies, except I forgot the name, Rogue One, which I think is I love it. I think it's a masterpiece.
I love Rogue One. I love Rogue One.
Except Rogue One, maybe the others suffered there's no Disney Plus yet. But at the same time, solo bombing was maybe the reason they decided to stop it with the Star Wars movies that are not the central ones, move it all to Disney Plus. So
it's hard to say because obviously I've not worked with Lucasfilm for a while, but it's hard to say where their head is at any particular time, especially because how far plans go out. But like I say I dislike Solo, but like it's not like I hated it. It just didn't work for me very well.
No, I just have fun with it. It was fun. You have, that Lando Calrissian that steals the movie. There's
a lot I like the individual parts of it. I like a lot.
Yeah, it seemed that Ron Howard was just hired to like, okay, we didn't like what the other guys did. You just take the pieces of the puzzle and make it work in some way. So it was fun. But let me ask you this: what is of the new ones? Did you like the movies? Do you don't like the movies? Which is if there's any you don't like, which one is it, and which one is the one you like the most?
Well, I think we've actually said it. Like, I think my favorite is Rogue One, and I think my least favorite is Solo.
I also mean the main ones.
No, I mean that as well.
Okay.
Like, I would put all the main ones in between those two.
Okay.
I would say of the movie, I think Rise of Skywalker is my least favorite. I think the middle one is my favorite, and The Force Awakens is the one in the middle there. That's if I was going to arrange them in that order, that's what I would do.
And what about Mandalorian?
I quite like them. There's so much of the Mandalorian is great. I watched it all, highly enjoyed it. There's a couple of things I'm like on a personal level, like I think they're all too good at fighting.
Yes.
Like there's that kind of thing. Like I was thinking about in Star Wars. In A New Hope, the reason why we joke about stormtroopers being terrible, but like stormtroopers are still working in A New Hope because the characters spend their entire time running away from them. You know what I mean? The characters treat them as a threat, whilst the Mandalorian is entirely based around no one can kill this guy or anyone else. In which case it kind of breaks Star Wars. So like, I love that. I mean, the fight scenes are great as artifacts. I like John Wick too. But like in terms of how they integrate, there's a problem for me there. But also it's great Star Wars and it's really entertaining. I like the style, the feel of it is. I think the Mandalorian gets the style so well as well. So like I'm not being down on it because I said I watched it all and loved it. So
no, I loved it, and what you said came to a boiling point. When the Taika Waititi episode, the last one in the first season, when they just take them absolutely as a joke with them making jokes about everything, and the stormtroopers are just a comedy relief, and you're like, well, we've always thought about them this way, so in a way,
like the bit. Okay, this is an example of one of the bits where like there's a certain form of plotting which is very popular at the moment, but it's like the bit where towards the end of the first season where they're trying to get away and the people are hanging around outside. And it's like there's no way we can fight our way through. The droid's got to go and sacrifice itself. It's obviously very powerful. And then of course I'm going, they've just killed 40 people. There's like 8. They can take this. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like the second or the bit earlier when the guy comes with a flamethrower, it's like, what can we possibly do to shoot this man in front of us? You know what I mean? Like, and these things, the stories make sense emotionally. I can see the story they're trying to tell. Just that how they've integrated that with the action, there's a slight jar, and that's the reason why I don't love the Mandalorian as much as I want to. But like, I still think it's great, and there's so much good stuff in there.
No, but that's true. There's parts of it where you feel like, yes, the characters do something in the last episode, especially. They do something because the script needs it, not because the logic, it makes sense. In that episode, it happens a lot where it's like, okay, that happened because the script asked for it. It's like, Iron Man 3. Like, okay, Iron Man 3 has a problem, the house explodes, he goes around, he does all that with the kid, and suddenly he calls on 40 armors. And you're like, wait, he just watched 40 minutes with the kid saying he had nothing, and then he just clicked on a dial and got 40 armors. What's going on here? Yeah, it doesn't fit.
I've seen Iron Man 3 once, and I must admit, I quite liked how it dealt with PTSD at the time. So like, and I can't remember what you've just described. But like, yeah, that would probably bug me. Like, yeah. There's a lot of. I do remember all the armors though. It was a long time ago. It was a busy time.
Yeah, no, it's what it is. It's a Shane Black movie. So you take it for what it is. It's fun, but if you start to scratch on the script, things don't.
So one of my favorite things is I don't know. Like I really, as a writer and also as a viewer, I really like stuff that commits to itself. Like it's like there's a reason. Die Hard is a good movie for various reasons. Yeah. But Die Hard completely, it's a great action movie, but it completely goes through its structure and it sets things up and pays off, and it doesn't cheat you, and it completely respects the concept of an action movie.
Yes. And
I cut off like Alien. There's one of the great I really don't like Prometheus, but like one of the great joys of like Alien is like. The reason why the quarantine is broken is because the android like lets them in, and Ripley is going to leave them outside and not let them in. Literally, and these are space haulers. So this is just whilst Prometheus, of course, it's let's take off our helmets and let's lick the alien. And it's like no, you just don't. You're not fundamentally respecting the concept you're presenting, and I find that insulting. So that's my problem.
I read an interview.
I'm going to get in trouble about this one. I'm sorry.
No. I read an interview with Damon Lindelof a long time ago about the script from Prometheus when he was, called out for the script and all that. Like he was like, "Let me explain. There was one script. Then they asked me to write another script. Then Ridley came and he just mixed things from both the scripts, just like that. He didn't care if it made sense or not. He just mixed it. So what you say." From one writer saying they are the smartest and another writer saying they're just dumb. It's two different scripts.
That's like that. That's literally that's the most depressing thing I've heard in a while. That's amazing.
I was reading it and I was like, wait, what?
It's hard. I mean, there's this thing. I always remember when I was younger. I thought the idea the idea that someone could give someone $200 million and it to a movie and end up bad just seems to be like, how could that happen? If you gave me $200 million, I would do something okay with it. But like the more you discover about Hollywood, the more you realize it's a miracle that any movie is any good. So like it's like when I talk about this, it's quite like I like separating this is what the movie did to me from the people involved, because the people involved, we have no idea what hell they went through.
Yeah. And in this case, the guy had Final Cut. I mean, Ridley Scott. So of course, any producers, Walter Hill or whoever, saying that doesn't work. They just did the opposite. He just said they are the smartest, and a second later they're being stupid. like the stupidest ever. And Ridley Scott can say, yeah, but it looks nice. That's what I like. I don't care. And I have Final Cut. And you're like, kill me now. Kill me now. Just Aaron Daniel says, greetings, Kieron. I know you like to play around with interesting panel structures in your comics. How do you approach playing with panel structure for Peter Cannon Thunderbolt?
I approached panel structure mischievously, like a trickster god. Honestly, it's like I said, that like I have strong feelings about Watchmen for various reasons. But at least Peter Cannon, it was basically me doing it was an action story, obviously, but at the same time, it's me doing a lecture about panels. As in, this is what comics can do. And for me, Watchmen, as I said, Watchmen is many things, but one of the things it did was it's a symphony of what you can do with panels. And for me, with Peter Cannon, it's like, okay, his superpower, you know, because Peter Cannon as a character, the main reason people care about him is because he was inspiration for Ozymandias. So doing a book about that, and especially also Peter Cannon as a character in the story, in the original stories, he learns his stuff by reading these ancient scrolls. Like reading the ancient scrolls is a metaphor for us as readers learning from other comics or other creators. Like I have read the scrolls. So the idea of Peter Cannon's superpower is the 9-panel grid. The idea of like Watchmen's superpower is the 9-panel grid. So that's kind of the underlying thing. So with Peter Cannon was, okay, I've never done a 9-panel grid comic properly, partially because my takeaway from Watchmen is to be truly inspired by Watchmen, you should not do what Watchmen did. Because the point of Watchmen is to create new things. You know, and the point of Watchmen is that. So I've never really gravitated towards a 9-panel grid except in Peter Cannon. Anyway, as I said, Peter Cannon's ability is he can use the 9-panel grid in clever ways. And that's what, and you know, and that, therefore the whole series became a lecture about how different people have used the 9-panel grid, different effects, how Alan used it, and then of course we have episode 4, which of course is we bring in Eddie Campbell. Of course, is somebody who is a completely different storyteller to Alan, but at the same time, obviously, has worked with Alan, and here's how he used the 9-panel grid. And of course, in the same way, I've read the scrolls comes back in. Peter Cannon learns this other way of using 9-panel grid, and therefore bringing back the ideas of an indie comic book defeats this very classical idea of what Watchmen did. So, like, it's a very it's a structure based around, you know, panel grids are superpowers. That was the high concept. And I always knew that whole kind of like the middle issue where I'm basically doing a Mark Millar issue. I've got the image of like doing these awful things. And just I've still got some cool ideas with a 9-panel grid. So like if me and Casper ever do like something else, I've still got other tricks in my sleeve. But you know what I mean? That was kind of I'm looking at your question, trying to work out if I've answered it or not.
No,
but at least
don't worry about it.
Definitely, the approach is to be playful and just that kind of like the first, like we call the arc Watch. You know what I mean? Obviously, reference to Watchmen, but it's also look at this. You know, and it's that kind of. So me and Casper were it's a cheeky book, you know, and it's that kind of like we're very proud of it. So thank you for reading it, Aaron.
We've been at this just so you know 2 hours and 2 minutes. So I guess you have to go back to your life.
Yes, I should be returning to my life. I'm going to have a cup of tea, and you can hear my throat is going. But this has been delightful so far. Yeah. So
one last question, and I'll let you go if you're fine with it. Is there any stories that you've been, let me say it this way, that you've stopped yourself from telling as a writer, thinking, you know what, I'm not ready yet. I'm not ready yet. And then, but that you know you're going to tell sooner or later, before you die or retire, that story is going to be with you until the moment you feel you're ready to tell it?
That's a good question. I'm not sure any of them I'm sure I'm going to tell. I've got big things I want to do, you know, like, but some of them I just don't, it's almost like I don't feel the need to tell them yet. And then some of it's just the level of research. Like, it's like, when I say I'm not ready, it's not that I don't feel emotionally ready.
Yeah.
It's much more about I feel unprepared to go. Like, I've got this big alternate fantasy set around the late 18th century. Like, it's me doing a really big warped Baroque fantasy thing. And I really want to like study everything. And I'm just not there yet. So that'd be an example. What I thought you were going to ask is, are there stories you thought you wanted to tell but decided not to tell because you don't think it's right to tell them? And the answer to that is also the answer to that is actually yes. Like there's certainly some story ideas I would have liked to have done, and I just think no, I'm not the dude to tell these. You know, like there's a story I want to do about the Viet Cong inventing pop music and using it as a device to talk about the divisions in America, and like basically it's a Marxist reading of American and social structure. You know. And there's lots of very cool stuff you can do with that, but it's like I'm not that. That's A, that's fucking incendiary, but B, like you know, obviously it's an idea I had in the mid-noughties. But there's a lot, you know, ideas are easy as the other thing. Like, I mean, the thing is, I'm still having ideas. There's an idea that's got under my skin that I kind of want to do next. But like What's the Future is an idea I've had for years, and then it was like just boom saying Dan Moore wants to do a book, and me thinking, look, there's that idea I've got lying around. I could, and Dan would be good for that. I could develop that. So a lot of it sort of is just opportunity. And also, I must admit, that big fantasy idea I've got, I think it's a novel. I've played with various mediums, but I think like it might be just because I don't want to bother writing a novel yet.
Okay, that's good to know. Anyway, thank you so much for being here, Kieron. I hope you enjoyed it. And to all of you, thank you for being here. Thank you for your questions and your comments, and especially for liking Kieron's work as he deserves, which is a lot. And see you all back on Thursday with illustrator and comic artist Jorge Gonzalez. And have fun, be decent, wear your mask. Remember, we're not out of the woods yet. We're working on it. There's a light by the end of the tunnel, but be decent. There's a spill lives at stake. So, thank you so much, and we're off in 3,
Thank you.